This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate fourth part of What If Naruto Was Betrayed by Leaf After Pain Attack. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
It was nighttime, and while Taiyo City itself was very much alive, the neighborhoods around it were fast asleep. The sound of sirens filled the air as police cars encircled a sizable car warehouse, with SWAT officers and armed police aiming their weapons at the entrance. 4 members of the team were stacked up at the door, with one pulling out a detonator and the group's commanding officer placing a breach charge close to the door handle. Breach and clear, go. Roger. After pressing the button, the SWAT officer sent the 4 running into the warehouse as the charge blasted the door inward. Immediately, a wall erupted behind them, and a voice echoed from the darkness. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. 3 of the officers ducked to the side and hid behind some metal support beams as a massive fireball hurtled towards them, scorching the unlucky 4th officer to death. Damn it, he's an Alpha Tango. Turn on your chakra scanners. The CO yelled, covering his right eye with a tube-shaped scope that was fastened to his helmet. The other SWAT officers followed suit. One shouted, 3 o'clock, and fired a burst from his FNP-90 submachine gun as he saw a shadow move to cover one of the support beams. Flank. Flank. Moving left and right to the next row of support beams nearer their target, the CO and another officer separated. Kaden. Enden. As the fireball crashed into the metal, beginning to melt it, the CO cursed. The lead police officer outside radioed the message to headquarters, saying, "We got a hot Alpha Tango. Requesting assistance. Repeat. Hot Alpha Tango," to the CO through his radio. A few minutes afterward, 2 men arrived at the police cars. A man with a red mohawk and a cigar lodged in his mouth was donning a gray flak jacket secured with 3 metal clasps, featuring a small and large scroll pouch on the front, a radio transceiver affixed to the right shoulder guard, and a loosely tied Uzushiogakure headband. He had sandals on, tape around his ankles, a blue shirt underneath, and black combat pants with 2 pouches on the back. A pin depicting the red cloud of the Akatsuki, a revered symbol in the city, was pinned to his flak jacket. The other had cerulean blue eyes, auburn hair, and a slashed-aim headband, as was customary for the organization. She also wore the Akatsuki cloak itself. The man with the mohawk asked, "What's the situation?" His partner wasn't as interested in this event as he was. "We've got a squad trapped in a barrier inside the warehouse. Their condition is unknown since the last time they called, which was a few minutes before you arrived. Their opponent is known to use the fire release, according to the chief police officer." "What are you going to do, Suzaku?" The man walked up to the blown open door and grinned, "Simple, save your men." Before he lifted his hand to the barrier and the blue glow wavered until it broke, the barrier shattered, he made a few hand signs. Suzaku asked the second man, Menma, to follow him inside, saying, "Come on Menma. Let's make this quick." "Whatever," he sighed, then cast a vacant glance around the empty warehouse. Suzaku exhaled some smoke, picked up the downed SWAT officer, and gave him to the paramedics outside. Smirking, he looked up to see the observation office and the destroyed stairs. He held out his right arm and said, "Must have taken them up there. Hold on a sec." At that moment, a stream of fire covered his arm, forming a blade of fire, up to the elbow. "All right, lift me up." With a gesture of his right arm, Menma caused red chakra to burst forth, forming a massive hand that reached beneath Suzaku's feet and pulled him up to the bottom of the observation office. The man, who had just finished tying up the last SWAT officer, whipped his hand around at the gaping hole as he sliced the blade right through the metal, leaving a melted gash in the metal that he pushed his hands into and began to spread apart. With his fire blade illuminating the unidentified shinobi, Suzaku entered the room and uttered, "It's not nice to keep hostages, you know." He was dressed like an ANBU, with a blank white mask on that made him look like an enraged demon with a smiling mouth that revealed the man's straightened mouth. Suzaku grinned at the red triangle, which was painted on the mosque's forehead and represented the Snakeheads, a well-known criminal organization. Suzaku laughed and turned to face the man, saying, well, we've got ourselves a snakehead." The man spit out a stream of fire that charged Suzaku in the shape of a dragon, saying, "Kaden. Karyu Enden." With a sneer, Suzaku moved his arm through the flames, effortlessly slicing through them with his fire blade. He then grabbed 3 kunai, the blades superheating as soon as he touched them, and hurled them towards the snakehead, pinning him against the wall. Kaden. Heizekisho. Suzaku exhaled a massive cloud of gunpowder that swiftly filled the room. Suzaku grabbed the 3 SWAT officers and the 2 hostages the man had already taken, making his escape back to the ground floor while the snakehead struggled to break free from the kunai. He asked, "You have an incendiary grenade?" as the SWAT company handed one to him. "Why do you need it?" He laughed, "Time to light it up," as he threw the grenade through the opening he had created, the grenade clinking as it struck the ground and tumbled to the feet of the now liberated snakehead. His eyes widened just before it exploded, the burning particles shooting outward to ignite the gunpowder and instantly destroying the snakehead and turning the room into a raging inferno of fire. After leading the squad and the hostages out of the warehouse with Menma, Suzaku informed the CO of the police gathered there of what had transpired inside before handing the scene over to the civil authorities. "This is boring as hell. I thought joining the Akatsuki would be a blast," Menma sighed as they jumped from rooftop to rooftop within the enormous city. "Well, I feel the same way, but the only thing that keeps me sane is your father. He's the leader and he keeps the peace. He would kick my ass anyway if he wanted to," said Suzaku as he looked at Menma. He stopped them on top of the building across from the headquarters of the Akatsuki Corporation, one of the tallest buildings in Taiyo City, and said, "Yeah. I know, I just wish something exciting could happen." They bolted up the side of the enormous skyscraper until they reached the roof, whereupon Suzaku covered himself in a henge, changing his combat gear for a black suit, pants, and red tie. Suzaku vaulted back over the edge of the roof and said, "Well, back to being the VPP. See ya later." Menma. He spun around and gazed blankly at one of the newest, but wisest, members of the organization. He was a special person who was from Senagakure. He had advanced through the ranks to become the VPM of the corporation by studying the writings and scrolls that the village's most well-known puppet master and former member of the old Akatsuki, Sasori, had left behind. With only minor adjustments, he even imitated Sasori's Hiriko puppet, called Hirashi, adding a 3-pronged scorpion tail and other hidden weapons beneath the Akatsuki cloak he used to adorn it. "What is it, Genkaku?" Menma inquired, the puppet master's eye visible through a hole in the bandana covering his face. Genkaku turned back to face the open stairwell door and said, "Your father wants to see you," in a sour voice. Menma trailed behind him and descended the stairs to the floor beneath the roof, the CEO of the corporation's penthouse and dominion. They emerged from the maintenance stairwell into a hallway with opulent paintings and a red rug, which led to a set of engraved oak doors, each bearing the Akatsuki cloud on its face. The voices inside the door grew quiet until one of them spoke as Genkaku's scorpion tail emerged from under his tail and tapped it. "Come in." Opening the door, Genkaku found himself in an opulent office overlooking the whole city, complete with an oak desk that held a phone and lamp, and a slashed Konoha headband. A modern-day rarity. Sitting atop it, to the right of the desk, there was an impressive fireplace accompanied by a high-end sofa and a 70-inch flat-screen television. The wall next to the fireplace had stacked bookshelves that reached the ceiling. Standing before the desk was an astral projection of a woman, who appeared kind and authoritative with amber eyes. The man behind the desk had blood-red hair, red eyes, and birthmarks resembling whiskers on his cheeks. His hands were clawed, and his right hand had a white ring with the character 0 inscribed on it. There was a coat rack with an Akatsuki cloak and straw hat next to the desk, obviously for travel and official organization use. Naruto said, looking like a man in his 30s, "We'll talk later, Conan. I appreciate your time." Conan nodded slightly before her form vanished with a buzz. With his elbows resting on the desk and his chin resting on his hands, Naruto lowered his head to look at Genkaku, who was waiting amiably for an answer. "Thank you, Genkaku. You may return to your duties. I hear that production down there has increased tenfold since I brought you into that position." Naruto laughed before Genkaku left the room, leaving the father and son alone. "Thank you, sir. I have methods that allow the workers to work to their full potential. Non-lethal, of course," Genkaku said in a dry accent. Menma approached Naruto and sat down in the chair in front of the desk after he gestured for her to do so. Menma shifted in the chair uncomfortably as silence fell between them. He asked haphazardly, "So, how's mom?" Menma sighed slightly in annoyance as Naruto asked, "Doing well. She's over in Getsugakure securing the build site for another Akatsuki skyscraper. How was the call with Suzaku? Menma crossed his arms and growled, boring as hell. I thought joining the Akatsuki would be awesome. Not responding to stupid hostage situations. I know how you feel, but these are peaceful times, you just can't expect something bad to just explode out of nowhere. Menma exclaimed, maybe I want that to happen. It's too damn boring just sitting around and doing fucking nothing around here. Just as Naruto started to release a deep growl. Menma, you really want all the hard work that I put into bringing peace to the world, a world that you could grow up in and never have to face what I went through, to all go down the shitter? Asked Naruto, with Menma scoffing at. Oh please, what you went through couldn't have been that bad. Menma realized at once that Naruto had made a grave error as his eye twitched. For 19 years of my life, I was given little to no food at all, the little I got being rotten. I was beaten every day by an angry mob of villagers with the support of even shinobi, who sometimes thought it was fun to bring kunai into the fray, was hated and shunned throughout my entire home of Konohagakure, being called Demon Boy. Because I once held the Kyuubi before I became one, and was treated like the very bane of the human race. I had no parents, no friends, no life. Now tell me how that wasn't that bad. I want to hear you say it. Said Naruto, borderlining going insane with rage, Menma absolutely speechless. After a few moments, he leaned back in his chair and calmed down. That's what I thought. Now listen up and get this through your thick skull. I will not tarnish the peace I've worked my ass off to return to the world, just so you won't be bored anymore. Got me? Naruto gave his son a small snarl as he stood up from the chair and left the room. Menma sighed. Yeah, sure, whatever. He got up from his desk and followed Menma, thinking to himself, damn boy. Hard-headed and stubborn like a bull. Was just like me. I guess I have to go apologize to him now. Menma was running toward the elevator in one of the first floor's hallways when he noticed something. He halted and turned around, coming to a halt in front of some iron doors that he had never seen before. Before pushing open a door and entering a dimly lit, empty room, he turned to look to either side of him. He began to return outside, dissatisfied with what he had discovered, but then he sensed an unidentified chakra emanating from somewhere outside the room. He approached the distant wall opposite the door and examined it, trying to identify the source of the weird chakra. When he heard the sound of gears turning behind the wall, he leapt back and removed his hand from the wall. He had placed his hand on the wall. Once more, he touched the wall, causing the gears to shift. A few clicks later, a section of the wall emerged, and Menma wrapped his fingers around it. After prying open the wall, he entered the hidden chamber and observed the numerous lit candles encircling a makeshift altar that held a massive red crystal. His eyes grew wide when he approached it to take a closer look and noticed a man inside the crystal. His eyes were closed and a faint smile appeared on his face. He had orange hair and what appeared to be blood dripping from his lip down his chin. Looking closer, Menma discovered a small crack in the crystal's perfect surface, which he rubbed with his thumb before jumping back. The large crack quickly spread throughout the entire crystal, shattering it all with a loud crash. Menma murmured, "Oh shit," as he noticed the unidentified man lying inside the pile of broken crystal. He asked, "Hey, are you alright?" as he touched the man's arm, causing his eyes to pop open and a loud gasp to come out of his mouth. Menma began to back away in a growing state of fear as the man hunched over and started to scream in agony as black chakra began to radiate from him and swarm over his body. Just as quickly as it began, it came to an end. The man stopped screaming in agony and got to his feet, letting out a deep laugh. Naruto blurted, "Menma, what's going?" "Oh no," as he dashed into the room and saw the man blink and smirk, his red eyes changing into a spiral pattern. The man said, "Naruto, I'd like to thank your son for freeing me from my prison. Now I will be able to enact my plan once again. Au revoir." As Naruto threw his hand at him, a giant Rasengan swirling violently in his hand, and black, flaming skeletal ribs surrounded him. With a scowl on his face, Naruto watched as he smashed the man out of the windows behind the altar and down into the city below. The man landed on top of a building and quickly fled the city. He turned and took out a radio, muttering something quickly into it as he moved in the direction of the door. "Dad, what's wrong?" Naruto stopped as he approached the door and said, "Menma, seems that excitement you wanted is going to come sooner than expected." Menma stopped in his tracks. "What do you mean? Who was that guy, and what's the eternal Tsukuyomi thing he talked about? Menma, you have just released Indra Otsutsuki, the eldest son of the Sage of Six Paths and the greatest evil in this world, back into the world to plague it once again. Well, I can help. Naruto, his cloak draping over his tail, saw Genkaku by his side and said, "No, you will stay here while we handle this." Menma uttered, but before Naruto gave him a fierce look. "Nah, Menma," he said, "you've done enough," and then he and Genkaku left the room, leaving Menma by herself, heartbroken and with wide eyes. With minimal effort, Indra had made his way to the city's periphery, and the authorities remained unaware of his escape. In his flight, he paused and turned to face the city, grinning at the enormous neon Akatsuki cloud sign glowing atop the tallest structure. "Assessing my resources now," he uttered, scrutinizing himself closely. He closed his eyes and made 3 hand gestures, thinking to himself, in the body of a former Biju, the Kyuubi no less. Interesting. I've already subjugated its chakra and melded it with my own. All I need to do is change my appearance and I can begin. Eizoku. Teki Jiko Hontai Henken no Jutsu. In an instant, the jutsu caused his entire body to change into that of a man with long black hair, 2 of which were wrapped in bandages and framed his face. A large hood and a black cloak with 6 buttons appeared over his clothes, and a chain wrapped around his right wrist and extended upwards, connecting to a handle that led to a ganbai that was in the process of developing. A tiny blade that could sever flesh formed at the tip of the ganbai, increasing the deadly force of the war fan. Subsequently, a white porcelain mask began to envelop his face, featuring a red circle applied to his forehead, a nose emerging, a pointed, edged smile concealing his mouth, and 2 eye holes with his crimson swirling eyes emerging from them. His right eye began to spin rapidly as he opened it wide after closing his left. His body started to twist and turn into his eye until he was completely gone. It took him thousands of miles to return to the crater that had once been Madara Uchiha's covert hideout. He scanned the crater's edges until he came across a tiny opening. After blinking a few times, he moved in that direction and appeared to phase through the rock and into a tunnel beneath the surface of the earth. After coming to an end, he turned left and walked up to an iron door guarded by seals, grinning at their cooperation. "Amateur," he exclaimed, breaking the seals in a matter of seconds and opening the door to reveal a spacious laboratory containing an operating table at its center, a rolling table stocked with medical instruments and scalpels, and storage containers stacked 3 walls high with preservative liquids and, above all, a pair of Sharingan eyes. A small label with the name of the container, its unlocked forms, and its possible jutsu were all written on the glass. He inched his way along each wall, reading the Sharingan's jutsu and names. Stopping at a pair, Indra said, "Naka Uchiha. Unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan, able to use Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu, and Izanagi." Before continuing on, he said to a few columns above, "Naori Uchiha. Unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan, able to use Izanami. Could be useful." He then grinned at its description as he noticed the one and only eye in the space. He said, "Shisui Uchiha. Unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan, able to use Tsukuyomi, Izanami, Izanagi, and Koto Amatsukami." Before removing the container and setting it on the operating table with the 2 he had read earlier. He opened them, took out each pair, and set them in the container containing Shisui's left eye. Then he closed his own eyes and covered the container with his hand. The chakra still contained in the eyeballs began to ooze outward and float up towards Indra's outstretched arm as he spoke, "Geto. Chakura Tenso no Jutsu." After emerging from the liquid, it started to permeate Ankoku's skin, passing through his veins, his arm, and his blood itself, until they swirled and created a brand new Tenketsu chakra point on the back of his hand. The skin parted and opened, revealing a socket that sank into the skin, nerves sprouting, and ultimately, an eyeball. Ankoku opened his eyes and withdrew his hand to examine the newly formed eye as a single pupil formed and blinked. He shot the Sharingan's gained chakra into his eye, causing it to blink. Indra smirked as a Sharingan materialized and changed into Naka Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan. The eye blinked once more, changing into Naori's and then Shisui's a 3rd time. With a sly smile on his face, Indra wrapped some tape around his hand, causing his eye to close tightly. Taking a deep breath of air, Indra left the lab and went back to the crater outside. A figure with white skin emerged from the ground behind him. "That boy who freed me." I sensed turmoil inside him, And after what I was able to sense from him as I fled, his father, that annoying Uzumaki, reprimanded him and left him broken. A tool that I can sway to my side, the man thought to himself. He asked without turning as the black and white man fully emerged from the ground while still wearing the Akatsuki cloak. Did you retrieve what I asked of you, Zetsu? He asked. White Zetsu held out his hand with a scroll in it and said, of course, I gathered a lock of hair from each of them. When Indra opened it, she discovered a red lock of hair in one seal mark and an orange lock in 6 others, all of which were prepared for a unique jutsu. And have you prepared some clones? As he said, Black Zetsu saw 6 white Zetsu clones appear from the earth behind him. Yes, they are ready. The white Zetsu clones were immediately surrounded by solid black circles formed by the seals as soon as Indra placed the scroll on the ground at his feet and said, good, let us begin. After making the appropriate hand gestures, Indra clapped his hands, sending his chakra exploding into the seals. Kachiyose. Edo Tensai. The ash and dust covered the white Zetsu clones, covering their skin and eventually obscuring their heads in the mound of material. They didn't even scream. Subsequently, they began to ascend and take on the shape of a human, with gray cloaks emerging to cover their bodies. One figure had her hair tied up in a short, onion-like bun, another had waist-length hair, a third had waist-length hair with a fringe running down the right side of its face, and a fourth was tall and stocky with short, spiky hair that was tied into a ponytail. The final figure had short, spiky hair and a necklace around his neck that resembled Hagoromo's Magatama necklace. One thing brought them all together. They all had body piercings that were black. Despite having long white hair that reached his chin, the 8th figure was extremely thin and appeared to be a dead body. Welcome back to the land of the living. Indra greeted the 7 figures, all of whom had pale skin and tiny fissures showing through their clothing. Jigokudo, the Naraka path of pain. Opening his eyes, the tall, stocky man saw the menacing Rinnegan. Ninjendo, the human path of pain. The man with long hair that reached his waist trailed behind the Naraka path. The animal paths of pain. The lone woman in the group and the man with the long ponytail both opened their eyes. Gakido, the Preta path of pain. Opening his eyes, the big man with the little ponytail sighed. As the final 2 individuals opened their eyes and their Rinnegans joined the other paths, Indra concluded, and of course, Yahiko, the diva path of pain. And Nagato Uzumaki, the outer path of pain. Yahiko looked at Nagato, bewildered and shocked. Where am I? Why am I alive? And, why are these piercings in my body? He asked. Before Indra started coughing, Nagato remarked, Yahiko, I have some explaining to do. Before 5 coffins emerged from the ground and encircled the other paths before disappearing, he said, I'll allow for you to do that later. Right now I need you 2 to do something for me. Yahiko growled, slid a chakra receiver into his hand, pointed it at Indra's throat, and said, you tell us where we are, now. Yahiko gazed at the rod, puzzled as to how he had managed to shape it. Nagato sighed, like I said, a lot of explaining to do. With a shrug, Indra said, very well, I guess I should inform you of where and when you are. Nagato raised an eyebrow in confusion. What do you mean by when? He inquired, while Indra giggled slightly. Currently, since you were last alive, Yahiko, you being used as a path of pain by Nagato, it has been 18 years, and the world is at peace. The villages are allies with one another, and with help from the daimyos, they have constructed Taiyo City, a sprawling metropolis that is inhabited by denizens and shinobi from all the villages. Explained Indra, Nagato's and Yahiko's mouths dropping to the floor. Nagato inquired, knowing exactly who had pulled off the feat, who accomplished this feat. With a tone that betrayed a hint of disgust, Indra said, the man was none other than Naruto Uzumaki. While Yahiko remained perplexed, Nagato grinned and said, I knew it. He gave his friend a quick glance before glaring at Indra again, saying, I'll tell you about him during my explanation of my actions while you were gone. He inquired, how is he? As Indra gave a slight snarl at the memory of the guy who had imprisoned him. Currently, he is one of the most well-known shinobi in the world and a successful businessman. Not only is he now a full-fledged Biju, the Kyuubi to be specific, but also he is the recognized leader of the Akatsuki organization and the CEO of the Akatsuki Corporation, an international company based around the world. Although, before he became the man he is today, took revenge on those who wronged him and his kind and obliterated Takigakure, Otogakure and Konohagakure. Unaware that Jiraiya had passed away, Yahiko thought of his and Nagato's former sensei and exclaimed, "Konoha? What happened to the village?" As Indra spoke, Yahiko's legs folded beneath him, forcing Nagato to grab him before he fell to the ground. Right now, in its place is literally a giant hole, straight to the center of the earth. Everyone in the village perished. With a sidelong glance at Nagato, Indra remarked, "You can reminisce later, I'm getting tired of talking about him." "Just who are you anyway? You could say that Madara Uchiha was one of my descendants." With the chakra receiver by his side, Yahiko regained his composure and asked, "Descendants?" With a sudden realization, Nagato's eyes widened slightly as Indra said, "Yes, along with the now extinct Hyuga clan. You see, my eyes carry the DNA of the dojutsus of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans." "No way," he said with a sneer from behind Indra's mask. "My name is Indra Otsutsuki, eldest son of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of six paths. And I am definitely not friends with the Uzumaki brat. And my original plan was to cast the infinite Tsukuyomi over the world. But I have changed my mind. I have every intent to make him and everyone he loves or cares about feel pain to the highest extent, and I know just how to do it." Angry, Nagato swung at Indra's throat, forming a chakra receiver, saying, "You bastard, I cannot allow that." The blade missed its mark and clanged against someone else's face. Nagato turned to face Yahiko, the person who had acquired the other blade, and saw the same look of shock on his face. As he made a single sign, Indra laughed, and when he made Yahiko and Nagato lower their arms against their will, they both grunted. "Kihihihi, I reincarnated you two through the use of the Edo Tensei. I have total control over both of you, every move you make will be orchestrated by me. And if I must, I can eliminate your personalities and turn you into mindless, cold-hearted killers. I won't have any insubordination," Indra said as Nagato and Yahiko scowled. "Now with that matter settled, I need you two to collect something for me." Akatsuki Tower, Taiyo City. All of the employees had been allowed to return home, and Naruto had placed the entire tower under lockdown. All of the Akatsuki members were either physically present in the room with him or had used the magic lantern body technique to transport him there. Menma was the only member who wasn't there. Naruto opened the meeting by saying, "I've called you all here to present a dire matter. My son has just released Indra back into the world, so we must capture him as soon as possible." "Amazing," murmured Naoshi, who was at his hometown of Kusagakure at the moment. As one of the only members still alive along with Genkaku and Suzaku, Kakashi questioned, "How was he released? I thought no one could break the crystal that contained him." "Actually, there was a way that the crystal could have broken. If a person possessing my chakra, the Kyuubi chakra, touches the crystal, it will shatter and free Indra. As you know, Akayuri possesses this chakra because of her ring and with being my wife," Enough said, "and all of you as well because of your rings. Menma possesses it because of course, he is my son." After Isobu passed away 20 years prior, Yahiko, who was then the Jinchuriki of Seiken, the Rokubi, questioned, "Well, what are we supposed to do?" "I'm going to reinstate the two-man teams. Each team will be positioned in each of the villages as protection. I will inform the daimyos in the cage of this dilemma after this meeting, and I have already decided the teams based on your personalities, chakra levels and so on. The teams are as follows. Genkaku and Kakashi." Said members nodded after exchanging quick glances. Suzaku and Naoshi. Suzaku smirked and let out some smoke as Naoshi let out a long, heavy sigh. Yahiko and Seryu. Yahiko folded his arms and rolled his eyes at Seryu, his new Suna shinobi partner. He was gifted and had studied under the Kazekage in the past. In addition to possessing all the skills the Kazekage possessed, he also had the capacity to create sand out of his own body. He felt immortal because he could control this special technique so well that he could turn parts of his body, or even his entire body, into sand at will. Shomei and Matabi, the pair of Biju, exchanged a smile and looked at one another before turning back to Naruto. Naruto said, "Senkuku and Konan. Your city is automatically a megacure because Konan is the Amikage." Senkuku and Konan nodded in agreement. Tamura and Arashi Junko, two of the organization's newest members from Shimogakure, responded to the statement in different ways. Tamura sighed deeply and waved his hand a little, but Arashi remained silent. Tamura, a formidable swordsman from the Junko clan, used a specially crafted sword that allowed him to power Shimobikir's renowned ice release and frost release directly from the blade. Like Naoshi, he too had similar arm enhancements, but instead of losing his arms, he was left with metallic ones that could extend far beyond what a typical human could. Arashi, on the other hand, was icy and cunning, remaining silent the majority of the time and only uttering words when necessary. In his clan and the village, he was a unique and exceptional case who only came forward once every 100 years. Everyone in the Junko clan was limited to using ice and frost release. This is because a mutation in the clan's DNA prevents the inheritor, in this case, Arashi, from using those particular Kekkei Genkai and instead allows them to use fire release, albeit with some unfavorable side effects. Because of the mutation, his internal body temperature is over 500 degrees, while that of his brother and the rest of his clan is below 0.40 degrees. He must also wear a specially modified gas mask to prevent his superheated breath from escaping, just as everyone else in his clan wears a mask to contain their breath, which can freeze objects if it comes into contact with it. Naruto leaned on the desk to look at the final two members, one with wild, shaggy black hair and the other with messy red hair that reached his neck. And finally, Noboru and Byako, he concluded. Byako Tora and Noboru Yamato were these men. Renowned shinobi from Kumo, Byako was trained by Darui, the fourth Raikage's right handman, to use both the lightning release and the special storm release used by the third Raikage. The people gave him the nickname, White Tiger, because of a unique jutsu that had been passed down through his clan, which allowed him to completely transform into a tiger around him by covering his body in lightning. However, Noboru was a cool-headed person who had the utmost respect for both Naruto and the Biju, especially for Naruto because the man had saved his village when he was a little boy. Despite their belief that the stronger the mind, the stronger the bloodline, Noboru was the only member of his clan to survive, having been subjected to mental torture as a child by the clan's top scientists in an attempt to create a super soldier. He killed all of his clan in retaliation, took the Blades of Death and the Raven summoning contract, and then ran away from the village, declaring himself an S-class criminal and missing Nin. He left the land of the moon and journeyed into the remote mountains of Lightning Country, where he lived in solitude until Byako discovered him. The two became friends as they traveled to Taiyo City. Noboru had a unique Kekkei Genkai that let him use his soul to absorb, drain, or completely destroy the soul of another person, akin to Dankato's spirit transformation technique. He goes by the moniker, Reaper of Souls, because of the Blades of Death, which are made of a unique material that enables him to transfer his unique Kekkei Genkai to them and sever someone's soul. Each group has a specific village to protect, and I will send word on the village you will protect once you depart. Everyone except Genkaku, Kakashi and Akayuri is dismissed. With a buzz, the other members' astral forms vanished, leaving Kakashi, Genkaku, and Akayuri by themselves in the office, while Suzaku exited the room. Kakashi raised an eyebrow in surprise at Naruto's statement. Now, you two will have a change of objectives. I'm sending 2 fox summons to Sanagakure to protect it while you two are outside the village. And what is this different objective you will be giving us? You two are to hunt down and capture or kill Indra before he becomes too much of a threat. This mission is beyond dangerous, so I trusted it to you two, some of my most loyal members. Naruto sighed slightly as Genkaku questioned, what about Suzaku? He is a member of your clan, do you not trust him? I do, but once he starts killing, he can't stop. He was the vermilion bird for a reason, after all, replied Naruto, to which Genkaku nodded in agreement. Kakashi pulled his Icha book from his sleeve and opened it. So, can I count on you two? If you cannot capture him, just relay his position to me through your rings, asked Naruto. You can count on us. Come on Genkaku, we have some hunting to do. Leaving the penthouse, Kakashi and Genkaku rode the elevator down the many levels of the Akatsuki Tower, the two of them silent as they went. When the digital floor counter reached 0, Kakashi smirked as he cast a quick glance upward. As the elevator doors opened and they emerged into the Akatsuki's underground base, which is situated directly beneath the tower, he said, let's go. They proceeded to one of the numerous doors and went inside a sizable workshop that was stocked with various tools, puppet parts, and other partially constructed puppets. Please give me a moment, Genkaku said sourly as several clicks resounded from beneath his cloak, and a little scroll emerged. His tail, resembling a scorpion, protruded from beneath the dark cloth, revealing the scroll. Kakashi watched as the cloak came off and revealed the Hirashi puppet he was using, which was unlike the Hiriko one. Its heavily armored and spiked spinal cord, with its blade, tipped ribcage protecting another pair of puppet arms, took the place of the large mask that was supposed to cover its back and protect the puppet master inside. It wasn't clear why they were needed. Genkaku growled, "Release." Just then, a cloud of smoke shot from the scroll, revealing to Kakashi that what was inside was... Wait, another puppet? Who is that? He inquired, nodding in the direction of the individual. Genkaku laughed and made a single sign before concentrating on the puppet. "It is, of course, me. This is my real body," he said as he uttered a single command and he instantly slumped over. A blue essence escaping from within Hirashi and floated over to Genkaku's body, phasing into a small metallic cylinder embedded into his chest, the kanji for soul engraved on its surface. His 4 arms, 2 made of flesh and blood and the other 2 puppet arms, surgically affixed just above the shoulder blades, flexed and stretched slightly as he abruptly jolted into wakefulness. His entire upper chest, throat, and lower jaw, mouth were covered in dark-colored metal plates that were affixed to his skin, which was a little strange. The truth was that he was a master puppeteer, a member of the Anbu, and a member of Sanagakure when he was ambushed by his team during a search and destroy mission to eliminate a sizable bandit group outside the village, leaving him severely scarred from a fire jutsu strike. He could only speak in a dry, raspy voice due to severe damage to his vocal cords, and even then, he could not talk for very long. Sometimes it would hurt too much. With a nod toward Kakashi, he put on his altered Akatsuki cloak, which had 4 sleeves and was unbuttoned all the way down to his waist. With a quick glance at Hirashi's empty shell, Kakashi raised an eyebrow and directed his red Sharingans towards Genkaku. With a horrifyingly raspy voice, Genkaku said, "Leave it to me." Lifting his right hand, he sealed Hirashi into the scroll he had previously rolled out, picked it up, and slid it into one of the numerous scroll holders embedded in his back. With a nod, Kakashi expanded his left eye slightly and turned on Kamui. The two then spiraled out of Genkaku's workshop and out the front door of the Akatsuki Tower. With the intention of reading it on their journey out of the city, Kakashi took his Icha book from his right sleeve and opened it. When they left the city, they were unaware of the 2 pairs of eyes watching them from the shadows, waiting for them to disappear before coming out of hiding. While they slid down the hill they were sitting on and waited for Yahiko to meet him at the bottom, Nagato complained, "I can't believe we're being forced to do this. You're informing me. This is awful," he answered, "at least I was dead when you were using me as a pain." He had been told by Nagato everything that had happened after he had sacrificed his life to save Konan and Nagato from Hanzo when they were younger, as well as the situation they were in at the time. Nagato said before reluctantly beginning to move toward the city with Yahiko trailing closely behind. "I guess we're going then." Squinting at the oncoming metropolis, he saw the massive Akatsuki Tower rising into the night sky, its vivid neon emblem acting as a beacon for them in the shadows. "We make our way there, go in, grab the kid, then get the hell out," Yahiko said. "Got it." And the two launched themselves into a silent sprint, flying over the tall city gates, past the guards, and, coincidentally, into an alleyway between 2 buildings. The 2 of them looked exactly alike, with Nagato's withered and emaciated appearance replaced by his younger, more youthful self. They were dressed in the maroon cloaks they had been reincarnated in, and they had the visible fissures and cracks of a reincarnated soul disappear. With a nod toward the alley exit, Nagato and the group lifted the bulky hoods covering their cloaks and ventured into the city's nightlife, blending in with the throng of people thronging its streets. He smiled slightly at Naruto's ingenuity for having thought of it when he looked up and saw the Akatsuki Tower directly in front of him. Placing the tower in the exact middle of the city will allow him to have a 360-degree perspective of the entire area. Astute. He had this thought just before they began to weave their way through the throng of people, passing by without a single suspicious look from anyone in their rush to reach the tower. They didn't mind it because they saw many people who were similar to them pass through. Guard patrol on the right. Yahiko looked that way and expressed his observation to Nagato. The 2 of them avoided each other until the appropriate time to leave the crowd in favor of a more convenient mode of transportation. They proceeded from building to building until they came to a skyscraper that was empty and sitting next to the enormous tower. This was very advantageous for them. They leapt to the side of the enormous skyscraper and ascended the building with their chakra, emerging through an open window. They had entered. Okay, let me locate our objective, Nagato said, closing his eyes and focusing on the structure. When they suddenly opened again, the two bolted for the stairs, avoiding the elevator. He's on the third to the top floor, just underneath the penthouse. Yahiko asked, is that where he is? As they easily ascended the stairs, Nagato nodding slowly. Yeah. Naruto, he sighed heavily before they arrived at the stairwell door marked 3. Once they were outside, they were met with a massive fireball that was hurtling in their direction. Nagato yelled, Shinra Tensai. As he swiftly raised his hand, dispelled the jutsu with a tiny scale explosion, and revealed the scowling Menma a short distance away. What brings you here, and who are you? Menma growled, his teeth bared. Answer soon or I'll kill you. While Nagato smiled back at him. The resemblance is uncanny, you have our support. Together with Yahiko, who formed a chakra rod in his hand and pointed its tip at Menma. Nagato also formed a rod while keeping his other hand by his side. Come with us, Yahiko said. Menma retorted, tell me who you are first. Nagato grinned and then gave Menma a direct look with his Rinnegan. All right, let's clarify a little bit about this topic. That will have to wait until later, though. Tenin Bansho. As he raised his hand to speak, Menma was propelled forward at him in an instant by an invisible force, and Nagato struck him in the jaw with such force that it knocked him out cold. Come on, let's go. Penthouse. After writing a ton of paperwork today, manufacturing bills, job site applications, sign-off forms, Naruto moaned and rubbed his hand. It was a nightmare. He abruptly became alert and arched an eyebrow in response to a chakra beneath him blunting. He bolted from his seat and out of his office, running down a few steps to the floor directly beneath the penthouse, where he saw 2 unidentified attackers smashing windows, one of them with Menma draped over their shoulders. Where do you think you're going? With a low growl, he demanded. The two turned to see Naruto get down on all fours, his demonic chakra beginning to bubble out of his skin. The person on the right nodded before allowing his partner to leave through the window hole, while the person on the left whispered, take care of him. The man smiled, hiding his eyes behind his big hood, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. When the man crossed his arms, he growled once more. As they started to circle each other, their eyes never leaving each other, he said, sneering at Naruto, how about you just let us get away and I won't have to hurt you? Ha, wasted opportunity. With a chilling laugh, Naruto threatened to rip out through jugular and tear the head off of your partner. The man shivered a little at his casual attitude toward a horrifying death. I guess now is the appropriate moment for me to take my leave. Goodbye, Naruto. The man said this before raising his head and showing the Uzumaki his eyes, causing him to pause before he stepped off the window's ledge. Naruto then ran to the ledge to see a strange sight. The man had vanished, absent from all traces. After his chakra returned to his body, Naruto swore at his own ignorance of the intrusion, lifted his finger to his earpiece, pressed the tiny button, and said a few words before turning away from the broken window and sprinting down the corridor in the direction of the stairs. He thought about this new enemy he had just come across as he ran. How is the Rinnegan in his possession? I am aware of only one bearer, Akayuri. This will keep me up at night. Better get in touch with everyone involved in this dire situation right away. I'm not happy with what's happening. The graveyard at Mountain. He heard footsteps approaching, and Indra opened his eyes to see, just out of the corner of his eye, Nagato and Yahiko walking toward him, holding a struggling Menma. He approached Nagato and Yahiko and said, "Ah, thank you for your service." However, they were unresponsive to his words of thanks. "So, this is that annoying Uzumaki's son?" Indra asked, studying Menma from head to toe behind his mask as Menma bared his fangs in a menacing manner. "You're that guy from the crystal I broke. I recognize your chakra." "Yeah, I did that. My name is Indra Otsutsuki, but you can just call me Indra." Menma scoffed at the man as he made a small bow introduction. Holding his hands behind his back and pacing back and forth, he demanded, "Why did you bring me here?" Indra laughed. "For just one purpose. You can assist me in reaching my objective. This is the reason you are here. As you put it, being an Akatsuki member was boring, and you had no desire to stay there. And I vaguely recall your father giving you quite a reprimand following my escape. Am I correct?" Indra asked, glancing at Menma, but all she got in return was a look of disgust. "Yes, you're correct. However, why do you think I'll assist you? You're wicked. Not always. All I want is for the world to be at peace. I won't think twice to slit someone's throat if they get in my way. Menma's rage temporarily subsided as he took in Indra's words and realized that he was, in fact, right. And you will help me because you wish to prove to your father that you can handle yourself and be a capable fighter worthy of inheriting the title of Kyuubi, Menma said with a tiny smile. Yeah. That is what I want, then why don't you help me achieve peace? Would that not prove your worthiness? Menma nodded slowly in response to Indra's question before letting go of Yahiko and Nagato's arms and rubbing his wrists before nodding again. With a menacing grin hidden behind his mask, Indra closed the eye on his left hand, letting a glint of red peek through the skin before the closure. Then, she took Menma by the shoulder and guided him in the direction of the tunnel that ran directly across from where they were. You may possess the chakra of a Kyuubi, but I will be the one to show you. True power. All you have to do is trust me. Menma smiled as they entered the tunnel's darkness, saying, Indra. I trust you. Indra. With a penetrating gaze, Menma was watching Indra closely during his meditation. Concentrate. See your inner darkness. Embrace it. Make it your own and shape it to what you want it to be, was his instruction to Menma. Indra gave him the next set of instructions when he gave a slight nod, signaling that he had completed that task. Now, take it and divide it into 9 equal halves and form them before you. His hair standing on end, Menma slowly rose to his feet and formed the tiger seal as chakra began to radiate from his body. Kumonju. He uttered before a mandala began to take shape above him, with a distinct kanji engraved in each ring. He exclaimed, Ku, Jen, Sei, Byaku, Shu, Nan, San, Hoku, Gyoku, as each kanji shown after its meaningful name was said. Subsequently, a massive serpent with golden scales emerged from the first, succeeded by a black tortoise with overlapping scales, a seahorse like dragon, a white tiger with black stripes, a large bird with majestic red feathers, a sage holding a wooden fox staff, a humanoid skeleton clad in a frayed black cloak, a second sage that bore an eerie scythe in its grasp, and lastly, a graceful woman with clear ribbons wrapped around her arms. Each of them had on a mask that concealed their faces and belied their real names. When Menma opened his eyes to look at his creations, Indra said, I present to you the 9 masked beasts, sections of the power you have gained that you alone control. Menma then put a hand to his stomach. And when he is not in use? He inquired, Menma's hand becoming more tightly coiled around a particular area of his stomach as Indra grinned. Menma reformed the tiger seal and absorbed the 9 masked beasts, while Indra said, the seal will keep him contained. When you need to utilize him and the beasts are out, you simply summon them back to your body and absorb them before summoning it. So, now what do we do? As White Zetsu materialized from the earth next to Indra, he declared, we wait for our new ally. Menma grinned and said, Ally? You've been busy Zetsu. Black Zetsu gave a deep laugh. He's a real sinister one too. They call him the Shinigami. Close to the boundary between Lightning Country and Fire Country. It's unbelievable that I'm returning home. It's been so long. I wonder how B is doing. Byako pondered while strolling alongside Noboru in the direction of Lightning Country, the location of Kumogakure, the village they were tasked with defending. Noboru answered, looking around the area for any suspicious characters. He's probably already heard we're coming since Naruto sent a message here concerning our arrival and is waiting to meet us. Though there were still bandits and missing people to deal with in the countryside, the villages were at peace. Before Noboru and Byaku could move, a man in a dark cloak with a hood running down the other side of the road shoved them aside and said, out of my way. Pal, where do you think you're going? You can't just run into us like that. Byako yelled at the enigmatic figure, who abruptly stopped and bowed slightly in response. The vicious scythe on his back, attached to a chain that snaked up his right sleeve, was the focus of Noboru's attention. What were your words to me? The figure asked, sounding a little more unhinged and with a slightly higher pitch this time. I told you that you couldn't just leave like that after seeing us, please at least apologize, man. Growling, Byako let out a growl. Then, in the space of a few feet, the figure grabbed hold of his scythe, turned around, and threw it back between them. Dude, what the hell? As Noboru peered worriedly at the man, feeling an old sense of deja vu from him, Byako spoke in confusion. The man growled, you don't talk to me like that. Less you want your tongue ripped out. Noboru and Bayako almost fainted when they saw what his face was seeing. He was donning a menacing mask that was split in half, with a black crescent moon on one side and an eyehole resembling a tomo with a glowing green pupil in the middle on the other. Lastly, he had a devilish smile that stretched from ear to ear and was made up of sharply overlapping teeth. The blood of innumerable victims had stained the kunai knife that hung around his neck like a necklace. Who the devil are you, exactly? As Bayako and Noboru prepared for battle, the figure pulled out his scythe, gripping it with his right hand while laughing hysterically. He then went completely silent before saying, "I am the Shinigami, and I am your worst nightmare." Immediately, Bayako raised an eyebrow in response to his friend. Noboru, whose eyes had widened as if he had seen a ghost, was shocked. "Hey, man, are you okay?" he asked. "You seem to have seen a ghost," as Noboru tightly gripped his twin swords and fixed his gaze on the man in front of them. Before he could unleash his left blade on the Shinigami, he said, "I just have." The man blocked it with his scythe and created a string of one-handed seals. With composure, he uttered, "Futon. Daitopa," and then extended his hand, unleashing a fierce windstorm that blasted towards the two Akatsuki members. Noboru thrust his swords into the earth, and Bayako dug his fists into the ground to protect himself from the fierce winds and avoid being thrown like paper. With a single seal, the Shinigami began to emit an unsettling yellow light, representing the moon imprinted on his mask. "Kokwamyo no Jutsu," he uttered, causing Noboru's eyes to widen. Suddenly, the area they were in grew extremely dark, and the Shinigami vanished from sight completely. He swore, grabbing his swords and encircling himself, closing his eyes, and remaining motionless to detect any hints of sound or chakra. "Damn it. He got us in the Genjutsu." "Genjutsu? What is it?" questioned Bayako before being shushed by Noboru. The Kokwamyo no Jutsu induces a hallucinogenic effect on the victim's vision, resulting in this dark realm. Noboru said softly, "That means we can't see him, but he can see us." Bayako, scanning the area in the dark, took Noboru's subliminal cue to remain silent. Abruptly, Noboru lunged forward with his left blade, preventing a sickle that had been hurled from the shadows from striking Bayako in the head. "You appear to know how to combat this guy. Are you familiar with him?" As Bayako heard a faint whooshing sound and Noboru ducked forward to avoid being hit by another sickle thrown, he asked. "Yes. Once." Noboru somberly replied before the genjutsu came to an end and he opened his eyes again. Bayako blinked as they reappeared in the plain beneath the soft moonlight, with the Shinigami standing a few yards in front of them and clearly staring at them. "Remember, that was just a warm-up. Don't get lazy." He laughed maniacally. Hee. Ha. Bayako became alarmed at the man's insane demeanor. Stop talking so much, Rantan. Sakasu Reza. The Shinigami fired multiple beams of electricity that shot like lasers at him as soon as Bayako clasped his hands together and pointed them at them like a gun. He jumped to the right, and the beams instantly pivoted to follow him, captivating him. "They're like guided missiles, which means I can't dodge them, but whatever, gives me an opportunity to trap them once more," he reasoned as he met the haughty Bayako's gaze. This allowed the jutsu to strike him, piercing his body and leaving scalding holes in both his skin and cloak. "I got him." "Nah." Bayako's smile wavered as the Shinigami's body split into a flock of ravens that flailed wildly around the two, or actually, just one, cried Noboru in panic. "How absurd." As the ravens reorganized into the Shinigami, Bayako swore, glaring at him directly, a red glow emerging from something dangling around his neck. Bayako screamed as big stakes drove through his body, pinning him to the spot and gushing blood from the puncture wounds. "Megan. Kasagui no Jutsu," he said. "Oh my god, goodbye, Miko," growled Noboru as he sidestepped the Shinigami's barrage of blades and cast a sidelong glance at his unconscious companion, who had once again been caught in the man's genjutsu. The horrors he was going through were beyond his imagination. "After I deal with you, I'm going to enjoy myself immensely by pulling out your organs." The man laughed sadistically, and Noboru gagged at the idea. "This guy is killing us both, so I have to deal with him quickly. Is this really the case?" He pondered for a moment before rolling across the ground and using his right sword, the blades of the Shinigami, to form a series of signs. Shingagami no Shukaku. Seishin Kenjutsu. With a swift utterance, He swung his scythe and prepared to strike the Shinigami, who instantly grasped his weapon and tensed to block the blow. Perish! It should kill him, cried Noboru as he swung the blade, holding the twin in his hand and slicing through the Shinigami's body as if he were phasing through it. In reality, though, he was cutting through his soul. The man was laughing loudly again, his cackling unsettling to Noboru as he slowly turned around and fixed his evil gaze once more on him. He stopped his run and turned back, expecting to see the man fall to the ground, dead. You really think that severing my soul will suffice to kill me? Noboru, you forget, do you recall? Then, gesturing to something concealed behind his mask, he pointed to the left side of his face. I'm soulless. I never die. I must endure this miserable world and my damned life until time runs out and hell freezes over. Haha. Fucking hell. This is it. With great intensity, the man cried, and Noboru's eyes grew gloomy at his somber remarks. Subsequently, he reverted to his initial demeanor, exhibiting a stony silence and lowering his arms. This implies that I'm going to kill you, rip out your throat, and take those blades. Tasuki no Yami Mugen. He spoke ominously as he formed a single seal that Noboru was unaware of, and all the while the moon appeared to be sitting directly next to the earth, softly lighting the grassy expanse with its light. After watching Byako vanish and cursing himself for being caught in the genjutsu afterwards, Noboru turned back to watch the Shinigami as he expertly swung his scythe around before planting its tip in the ground. He said, Kaijiten. Bochi no Satsugai, and Noboru narrowed his eyes to see several gravestones popping up out of the soft dirt around them with names that were too small to read. Out of nowhere, two arms appeared from beside him. They were entirely made of flesh and tightly wrapped around his wrists and ankles, impeding his movement and holding him there. The Shinigami said, now for the finale. Jujutsu. Shinigami no Chuku Saoryusudira. Then, to Noboru's horror, he took the scythe and, with its sharp tip jabbing through his chest from waist to shoulder blades, ripping open his skin and causing a growing pool of the red liquid that almost made him throw up. The Shinigami dropped the scythe from his hand, and his head lurched to the side, his hollow eyes locking with Noboru's until his head snapped backward with a loud pop, sickening Noboru until his skin began to peel away while he bent backward until he eventually touched his hands to the ground. He then stood on all fours, the enormous gash in his chest growing wider and wider until his spine popped upward, followed by the shoulder blade, and then the arms slid out of their skin and muscles, leaving those to support the body, and finally his skull emerged, its hollow eyes staring at Noboru. Christ Jesus. As the skeleton opened its jaw and released a black gas that drifted out and formed into a wicked black scythe that it gripped in its bony hands, Noboru screamed in complete horror. Then it addressed Noboru in a raspy, dry voice. Beware of the Shinigami. The black scythe then swung horizontally, sending Noboru a sickle-shaped chakra wave that he was unable to avoid. Before he accepted his fate, all he could think was, well, this is it. When the Shinigami's skeleton suddenly leapt forward with a loud snap, as if something had struck it from behind, it screamed before the darkness suddenly burst forth in a flash of light, and Noboru gasped in surprise when he saw Byako kick the Shinigami a few feet away. Noboru discovered that the Shinigami was still in the same spot and that there were no gravestones, arms binding him, or anything else. However, the scene where the Shinigami turned into, well, whatever that was far too real. Noboru, are you okay? As he jumped over to where he stood and peered at the Shinigami, Byako questioned. Yes, tell me how you managed to escape that genjutsu, he questioned, trying to shake off the queasy feeling he had from the jutsu he had encountered. I just realized that Naruto had taught us how to get out of a genjutsu. Possess a strong will or, if necessary, hurt yourself physically to shock yourself out of it. See? Byako gave Noboru an explanation as he raised his left hand to show him his bleeding hand and a tiny cut on his palm. You idiot, I'm going to kill you, snarled the Shinigami as he reached for his scythe, ready to charge, only for his more composed and stoic persona to take over. He waved his hand and said, but not right now. First, I have some business to attend to. Ta-ta. Then, his body physically split into a flock of ravens and flew away from the two, leaving them by themselves on the road. Send a report back to Naruto. There's a new player in this game, and I think he might be with Indra. 2 hours later, at Mountain's graveyard, Menma was once again deep in meditation, eyes closed, fists clenched, in one of the many subterranean chambers that used to be the notorious Madara Uchiha's headquarters. He took a deep breath and released it, feeling a stream of dark red chakra begin to leave his body as he opened up his new internal tenant, sealed inside of him. In addition to his whisker birthmarks, which he inherited from Naruto, his fangs grew slightly larger. A dark red chakra began to bubble across his skin, forming a tail and 2 large ears. Silently watching him from a safe distance, Indra was amazed at how fast he was able to control its chakra and claim it for himself. He thought, amazing. He can create the version 1 cloak. There are countless possibilities with him. Then Menma roused from his slumber and he opened his eyes, the dark red chakra resurfacing through his skin. He's here, he exclaimed, hastily getting to his feet and covering his face with his new mask. When his father led the Akatsuki prior to Konohagakure's destruction as Akuma, he donned an identical kitsune mask. He now also wore a tattered gray, blue cape emblazoned with his personal emblem, a mandala made up of 9 reddish, brown circles of varying sizes atop a larger green, gray circle, and a dark blue, gray robe with a fur collar and gray lining. Zetsu rose from the ground, a raven perched on his left arm, and Indra moved forward to stand beside him. The raven growled at the two before flapping its wings and being released by Zetsu. The raven then changed into a man with a scythe on his back and a black cloak. The man looked at Menma from behind his mask and said, "Sorry I'm late. I ran into some trouble on the way here." The other man said the same thing. "No worries. Now, who shall I ask are you?" Indra questioned, looking at the man's mask with a slightly unsettling smile. With a bow, Indra announced, "My name is Horo Yamato, otherwise known as the Shinigami, at your service," recalling the clan name. "You're from Getsugakure, aren't you?" "Formerly. Currently, I am one of the only 2 people left alive from our clan. I was a survivor, the other was the one who massacred our clan," said Horo sourly, Indra nodding. He asked Menma, "And who are you?" Silent and stupid. But all he got in return was a sharp rebuke and a powerful chakra blast that knocked him back a few feet. He growled, "My identity does not concern you. But talk to me like that again and I'll rip your throat out." Horo laughed as he recovered from the chakra blast. He said to Indra, "Whoever you are, I like you. So, where do we start?" and was met with an evil smile and a glint in his red eyes. "First off, I tell you of Project Tasuki no Mi. Then, we proceed with Phase 2. Naruto marveled a little at its size and construction as he reclined and turned his chair to look out over the city's nightlife. He was still in disbelief that the villagers had united to build such a city, and that he had been able to contribute to its completion and realize Nagato's promise. Nevertheless, the idea of Indra returning to the world and the knowledge that his son had been abducted by those 2 previous men left him feeling uneasy. His wife Akayuri was the most surprised since she had thought she was the only one still alive with the coveted dojutsu. He had just finished informing the others about the appearance of another Rinnegan bearer a few hours earlier. "I just can't get my mind around it." Akayuri was the last genuine carrier of the Rinnegan, after Nagato and his paths. "I won't say it, but the only logical conclusion I can draw is," he thought to himself as he stood up from his desk and started to walk around it quickly, his mind racing to come up with an alternative solution. "Naruto." He looked away as Byaku's astral projection materialized in his office. "Go ahead. We've arrived at Kumogakure, but we had a little distraction on the way here." "What was that? Bandits? Missing? Nin?" inquired Naruto, who paused his pacing to observe Byaku move around. "Noboru, and I think the latter is the case. The strange thing is that Noboru claimed to have seen a ghost when I asked him, even though it appeared as though he had only seen him." Byaku said, "He believes it was someone from his past." Naruto nodded, understanding all too well about Noboru's past, the experiments carried out on him by his clan and the subsequent destruction he inflicted upon them. "Explain how he looked. How did he appear? What was the name of this person?" "He had on a black cloak with long sleeves and a big hood. He wore an eerie mask with a huge, grotesque smile on it, and carried a large scythe that was fastened to his right wrist by a long black chain. He identified as the Shinigami and appeared to be familiar with Noboru." "Ninjutsu?" inquired Naruto, constructing the image of the man in his thoughts based on the details Byaku had provided. He seemed to be very proficient in kenjutsu since he was wielding a scythe, was a very skilled user of genjutsu and used some wind release, and a whisper in his ear, likely from Noboru, caused him to stop. And he was able to use the demonic release and a curse technique. Naruto's eyes widened at the mention of the curse technique and the nature transformation he believed to be exclusive to Biju and their Jinchuriki. I only know of one person that could use Jujutsu. The old Akatsuki member Hidan. It was noted. What manner did he behave? Was he psychopathic or bloodthirsty? Yes, in actuality. However, he went beyond that. He appeared to possess two distinct personas. The other was cruel, psychopathic, and heartless, while the first was aloof, stoic, and dead serious. Two distinct personalities. Is that Zetsu? However, he should be dead. How is he still alive? What about the demonic release? Did he exhibit any red chakra of some sort? Not at all, in Noboru's opinion. Demonic release. Graveyard killing was the only demonic release jutsu he employed. How come? You speak with him here. Byako spoke before another astral projection, taking on the form of Noboru, materialized next to him. I believe this is one of the demonic release jutsu exclusive to a user of my clan who was imprinted with the infamous Raven's Claw curse mark. Byako remained silent to let his partner finish speaking as he forcefully explained Noboru. As Naruto grew more interested in this Shinigami, he said, "Explain." The Raven's Claw curse mark typically appears on the user's face, particularly in the areas surrounding an eye. The curse mark bestows amazing abilities, including the ability to employ the clan's demonic release jutsu and strong genjutsu, which feeds off the anxieties and nightmares of its targets. However, there are drawbacks to using this power. What were they? The user would typically go through personality changes. For example, if he was previously an optimistic person, the curse mark would turn him into a gloomy, stoic person. In the worst situations, they would drive them insane and, in still worse situations, force them to commit suicide. Another negative consequence is that the user's face would be severely altered. Sometimes it would cause them to become extremely thin and emaciated, and other times it would cause them to grow tiny horns from their forehead and split their face in half, with the side bearing the curse mark usually remaining the same and the other half looking horribly deformed or even demonic. Naruto exclaimed, "Jesus," realizing the extent of the curse mark, the cunning of Noboru's clan, and their terrifying jutsu. I think that because our Shinigami had this curse mark, he went insane and split into two different personalities. Additionally, I think, and this is just a hunch, that he is, in fact, a survivor of the Yamato clan, which is my clan. Noboru stated firmly, with the information that I've gathered. I might know who he is. Naruto arched an eyebrow at the tension in his voice. If my assumption is correct, the man we fought today was none other than Horo Yamato. My former friend. Naruto said, trying to hide his shock at learning that Noboru wasn't the only member of his clan to have survived. He thought to himself, hey, it's kind of like me and Suzaku in a sense, and turned to face his desk, glancing at the two of them. He looked from the two to the other. Is there anything more I should know about this person? Before Byako answered, he asked. Indeed. Byako said menacingly, we think he might be heading to where Indra is and joining his side. Naruto slowly shook his head. Excellent. I appreciate you both telling me this. I'll put his name on the list of ninja that the other villages should be on the lookout for because he is very dangerous. Dismissed, Naruto declared as the two departed, leaving him by himself in his office once more. Naruto prayed, Jen Kaku. Kakashi, please tell me you're close to solving this issue before it gets any worse. Before returning to his chair to consider the new knowledge he had been given. The graveyard at Mountain Menma and Horo followed Indra into the darkest corners of Madara Uchiha's lair, until they arrived at the lowest pit, which held the enormous flower the elder Uchiha had raised all his life and the clone he had created from Hashirama Senju inserted in its roots. Even though it had lain dormant here for a very long time, Indra felt its strong life force when he ran his hand over it. He looked back to see Horo and Menma waiting for him to start. As you are well aware, this used to be the hideout of the notorious Madara Uchiha, the head of the aforementioned esteemed clan, who has since been eradicated. All that's left of this clan's formidable strength is the enormous lab of Sharingan eyes that Madara gathered on the eve of the Uchiha massacre. Additionally, this flower bears witness to them since Madara himself cultivated it by using the demonic statue of the outer path to prolong his own life so that he could work on it. He rested his hand on Hashirama's clone, but not before he started Indra. He created this exact clone of his fiercest opponent, Hashirama Senju, by studying the cells of his adversary. As of right now, this is the only source offering the wood release, or Keke Genkai Mokuton, I'll discuss this more later. Project Tsuki no Mi. The Eye of the Moon is a scheme that Madara Uchiha, the inheritor of my strong chakra and will, created while I was living in exile. How does Tsuki no Mi work? With a yawn, Horo said, "Get to the point." Menma was quick to silence him and give him a silent reprimand. To use Tsuki no Mi, one must master the Infinite Tsukuyomi, a potent genjutsu that can conjure up a completely empty dimension that the user can fill with anything they want, no matter how specific, and manipulate. But in order to submerge every human being under its influence, it must be launched onto the moon's surface by means of the Shinju, or Jubi, eye. One needs to become its Jinchuriki in order to accomplish this. But it's not feasible, Menma said dryly. The demonic statue of the outer path was destroyed long ago, to which Indra nodded. It was indeed destroyed. However, in a few weeks, an extremely uncommon occurrence will take place. The moon will align itself so that a unique lunar eclipse occurs once every 1,000 years. When the moon reaches its last phase, the full moon phase, the light from the sun will be refracted onto it, turning it from white to a blood-red color. As he held the Hashirama clone in his hand to gauge the response of his two followers, Indra said, "This event is known as the Red Dawn." Menma questioned, "What does a blood moon have to do with the demonic statue of the outer path?" Indra smiled in response. "You see, with the use of the scroll of the Crimson Moon, you can summon something again that was previously destroyed or wiped out of existence on the night of the Red Dawn's rising. The scroll contains a unique hand sign that, when added to the end of any summoning jutsu, causes that particular item to be summoned back into existence out of thin air. That's how the demonic statue will be obtained." "So, what do we do until that time?" Horo inquired, making Indra's smile turn into a sinister grin. "We begin Tsuki no Mi's first phase. The Biju must be taken out." Menma hesitated a little at this statement, but he managed to hide it very well behind his mask of stoicism as Indra met his gaze. "And that's where we come back to this Hashirama clone. Menma, I will introduce his cells into your body, enabling you to use the wood release to seize the Biju for sealing," Indra uttered, and Horo interrupted with another query. "What will we use to seal the Biju? My father, the Sage of Six Paths, used two tools in the past. The Benihasago and the Kohaku no Johei. The notorious Gold and Silver brothers of Kumogakure, along with the Bishozan, the Shichiseiken, and the Kokinjo, used to use them." Horo shook his finger at Indra as he realized what he was getting up to, explaining, "The Benihasago was still with the brothers when they perished, but the Kohaku no Johei is currently in the possession of Kumogakure. You're going to bring the two brothers back to life so we can rob them of their priceless tools. How?" Zetsu took a scroll from the skeleton of a man named Kabuto Yakushi that contained the DNA of the brother along with the DNA of many other shinobi. "I've already made the required sacrifices and have the proper jutsu to call them." Declaring this, Indra formed a single sign, and two coffins materialized out of thin air, their covers opening with a hiss. With a dull thud, they fell to the ground, and Menma and Horo peered inside to see the Gold and Silver brothers' deactivated forms with their precious tools still attached. At this point, "Menma, you are going to gather the Kohaku no Johei and then go right ahead to wherever you need to go in order to catch the first Biju. In order to use the Benihasago, Kokinjo, and Shichiseiken to capture Biju, Horo will acquire them." As Horo reached into one of the coffins and retrieved the Benihasago and Kokinjo, he looked at the Shichiseiken and wrapped the latter around his shoulder to hold the former. "I will absorb the Biju you capture and hold them until we resurrect the demonic statue," declared Indra. "I think I can assimilate the Shichiseiken's specific power into my scythe, so I won't have to use that tacky sword." As he drew the sword and grasped the scythe to plant its tip in the ground near his feet in order to perform the particular jutsu, he thought to himself. Indra took some of the chakra and cells from Hashirama's clone and incorporated them into Menma's system, telling him it will take a few days for it to awaken. Meanwhile, Menma had rolled up his right sleeve. Then he pivoted and started to leave the spacious cavern, with Indra observing his departure. He called out, and Menma stopped, turning his head slightly to hear him out. Menma did not reply as he continued climbing the steep set of stairs that descended into the cavern. "Show no mercy," he commanded. While strolling, he made a seal and muttered inaudibly, "Jinten. Kage no Taijin no Jutsu." Abruptly vanishing, he resurfaced in the sizable crater outside, trailing a trail of dust, grinning at the jutsu's efficacy before he turned his attention to Kumogakure. Kumo is the first place to go. Then, Sanagakure, he thought to himself before starting the arduous journey to Lightning Country. Taiyo City. We've found no sign of Menma or Indra yet, we'll report back if we find anything. As Kakashi's astral form vanished, Naruto sighed, alright, dismissed. Then, as soon as he was gone, he let out a huge roar that rattled the training room walls, expressing his fury. He extended his hand, grabbed a training dummy, and smashed it to pieces right away. Naruto took deep breaths and uttered, calm down. Calm down. His fury subsided and he was able to wipe the perspiration from his brow following the rigorous training regimen that would have killed off a regular shinobi. He was able to do this because he was abnormal. Naruto walked over to a bench and retrieved his rare, slashed Konoha headband, saying, I need to take a vacation. All the pressures of dealing with an international company and being the leader of the most powerful group of shinobi alive is stressing me out. He hung it from his neck and proceeded to exit the training room, which was really more of a hallway, by heading for the elevator. He shelled out top dollar for a football field sized training facility outfitted with all the equipment a shinobi could require to hone his physical and mental prowess. He thought to himself as he rode the elevator back up to the main section of the Akatsuki base, which was hidden beneath the enormous skyscraper above. Actually, I haven't met Gaara in a long time. I wonder how he's doing. He thought to himself, that's a good idea. A very good idea, and then he touched his ear communicator to speak with his chief guard for the base and tower. This is Naruto. I'm heading out for a couple of days to make a visit to Sanagakure. I trust you'll run things here? Of course, sir, everything will be fine. Naruto answered, good. He then smiled to himself, put on his Akatsuki cloak, making sure to button it all the way up, and vanished from the entrance hall, only to reappear outside Taiyo City in a column of fire. Breathing deeply, he exhaled slowly as he enjoyed the clean air outside the city behind him. Ah, feels good to be out of there, now to go to Suna. He began to move forward, wanting to enjoy the sensation of walking outside in the sun for a while and only changing into his true form once he was outside of the city. He transformed into a dragon once he judged that he was far enough away to tower over the landscape, his 9 red orange tails swishing about behind him to create powerful gusts of wind, and his footsteps making the ground tremble with his might. He was enjoying the sensation of the sun's rays on his fur as it shone brightly outside. Oh, how long he had been waiting to leave that office of his. The entrance to Kumogakure, but in Lightning Country, the sky was black with a violent storm that was raining raindrops on the ground, shooting bolts of lightning that lit up the night sky, and thunderclaps that shook the entire area. Occasionally, an uncommon event like this would surface over Kumo. While some would take cover from the feared lightning strikes that were said to constantly appear in the Kumo area, others would instead aim to improve their skills by trying to deflect lightning. This achievement was made many years ago by a shinobi by the name of Yaru Turin. He'd been in the center of several lightning strikes, and through the devastation and flames that followed, he channeled his chakra and lightning affinity through his veins until, at last, a bolt of lightning struck his outstretched arm. With his other hand, he deflected the bolt straight back up into the air, producing a breathtaking display that many would pay to witness. He rose to fame and became a master of the lightning release ever since that day. The storm had not abated in the slightest, but 2 shinobi wearing parkas stood guard at the entrance to Kumogakure, hating their jobs and perhaps their lives as well. One cursed, squinting to try and see through the rain falling on them, the spotlights positioned on the walls not doing much good. Damn, I can't see a thing. The other muttered, shivering a little in the chilly rain, his parka providing little protection from the cold he was feeling from each drop hitting its thin surface. Just use your chakra to scan the area. They had no idea that a shadowy figure was watching them from beneath the downpour, his mask preventing the rain from impairing his vision in the slightest. He made 6 hand gestures and raised his right hand to the ominous clouds while muttering to himself, Yukojizai no Jutsu. He closed his eyes and used the chakra he had infused into the next wave of rain to not only prolong the rain's fall but also see a picture of the entire village with all of the shinobi and guard patrols outside. This allowed him to map out his route to the cage building with great efficiency. Grinning, he said to himself, perfect. Then, rising from his prone position, he started to move toward the gate, the spotlights failing to detect him due to the rain. The man in the mask concealed his chakra so well that it was impossible for the 2 shinobi stationed at the gate to find him either. Even the world's most advanced sensor types were unable to identify him. He was hoping for the flash of lightning, because that was the only thing that would reveal his position. He picked up 2 kunai that had fallen into his hand and hurled them in their direction. "I'm getting tired of this rain," one of the shinobi uttered as lightning struck and thunder erupted overhead, revealing a figure approaching the gate. The figure was dressed in a fur-collared cloak and a white mask. "What the?" was all he could say before a kunai struck him squarely between the eyes. His partner suffered the same fate, falling to the ground unconscious while the shinobi perched on top of the wall, oblivious to what had happened. Menma walked up to the 2 dead shinobi and took the kunai out of their heads, wiping the blood from their blades on their clothes. Then, he climbed the wall and silently killed the few guards that were posted there. "This is pathetic," Menma exclaimed. His eyes swept over the cloud-shrouded village, searching every rooftop for any shinobi or Anbu hiding there. Eventually, they settled on the cage building, which was carved into the side of the tallest, sharpest mountain in the village. He grinned as he noticed a lit room close to the top floor of the structure. Bingo! Without a single enemy detection alert from Kumo.nin, he jumped off the wall and moved from rooftop to rooftop, approaching the cage building in the cover of the rain and darkness. "It seems like this weather never seems to go away, and I'm surprised no one has tried to imitate Yaru Toran's actions yet," he remarked, watching the storm from the comfort of his office, where the Kohaku no Johei was perched on its pedestal as usual in the spacious space. He paced the area around the wooden furniture piece while walking away from the window. His left-hand man, C, was standing nearby with his arms crossed, and his assistant Mabui was standing next to him. Darui, his most trusted guard, was watching him from where he leaned up against one of the room's many pillars. Darui nodded as C said, his voice laced with suspicion, "Usually the storm would pass after a few hours. This has been going on since this morning." Before addressing the matter at hand, he glanced at him and remarked, "Yeah, this is definitely weird." This time it was Mabui who asked, "So, do you know B's whereabouts? With Indra on the loose again, we can't take any chances. He's at the Valley of Clouds and Lightning. He's been training there ever since the storm began. I made sure to send Dodai and the 2 Akatsuki members out to stay with him and keep him out of harm's way." A nodded and said, "Good thinking. Dodai is just the man for the job, and Byako and Noboru will protect him." Then he looked at Kohaku no Johei. Then C's eyebrows shot up at the sudden presence of chakra in the room. "And what about that? Are we going to have a use for it anymore, now that B doesn't require help with controlling Yuki anymore and that Matabi is with Akatsuki now?" he asked. "I'll take it off our hands for you." All eyes turned to the man circumnavigating the pedestal of the ceiling pot, raindrops cascading off his cloak and creating a trail of wet cement behind him. Menma dodged under the blow, swung his arm to grasp the hilt of the blade, and sent a charging foot into Darui's abdomen just as he was about to be hacked off by Darui with his executioner's blade. He was blasted backward, rolling across the ground and stopping in front of A and C with Menma holding his sword. Asking, "Who are you, and how did you get in this room?" It was perplexed as to why the guards were standing outside the office. "Oh, those 2 guarding your office?" the man asked, lifting up his other hand to reveal that he was holding a still, beating heart rather than the sword, which was covered in blood. The man said in a gloomy voice, "They're dead." He then flung the heart aside and threw the sword toward them, its blade sinking just inches from C's foot. Darui regained his composure and picked up his sword, asking, "C, shouldn't you have sensed him coming?" Mabui stepped back to keep a distance from the conflict. As C prepared to give the Raikage his life in defense, he said, "I didn't sense anything. He must have hidden his chakra when he penetrated the village." "Well, I just came for the Kohaku no Johei and I'll be heading out," Menma uttered, just before he balled up his fist. Menma raised an eyebrow at the name B before he remembered it, growling, "If you think you're getting out of here alive with that, and possibly go after B, you're dead wrong. It seems you've had a change of plans. B, that's your brother, the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, right?" Menma asked, just before he appeared out of nowhere wearing his lightning release armor and was clenching his fist just inches from Menma. Everyone was shocked to see that the masked man was not only unharmed but had also stopped the Raikage cold. He raised his hand, and the sound of skin on skin reverberated throughout the room. A plume of dust and a massive shockwave emerged outward that caused the floor to crack. "What, Mokuton? Mokasatsu Shibari no Jutsu," Menma uttered before a number of sizable, Hardwood branches protruded from his wrist and encircled the raikage, securing him in a bound state as the use of the thought. Extinguishing Keke Genkai caused a gasp in the air. "The wood release?" exclaimed C as Darui lunged toward Menma, surprising him by swung around his sword and sliced through his cloak's right sleeve and chest. Darui then fell to the ground and gave Menma an uppercut to the jaw that sent him flying back. As he released her from the wooden binding, Darui remarked, "I've got you, boss." The two stood side by side and watched Menma get back up from where he had been lying. Menma said, "You two have good teamwork. It's a shame I can't stay and entertain myself for a little while longer. I have places to be." Immediately, a strange dark red chakra appeared in Menma's cloak, and Darui's eyes became fixated on it before he disappeared. Genten. Muasho. Darui was suddenly attacked by an unseen Menma, who beat him viciously and quickly until Menma materialized in front of him. Menma struck Darui in the center of his chest with an open palm, taking away his breath and sending him flying back. "Reigyaku Suihei!" exclaimed A as he delivered a lateral chop to Menma's neck that was backhanded. Menma dodged the blow so quickly that it faltered, allowing Menma to make a few hand gestures and throw his hand outstretched. "Mokuton. Sashiki no Jutsu," he uttered before a tiny wooden stake materialized from the palm of his hand and was driven through his lightning release armor and into his wrist. The raikage initially flinched, but then gasped in horror as several wooden branches burst out of his chest and back, splattering Menma's cloak red and leaving Mabui and C stunned and terrified. Menma jumped up to the Kohaku no Johei and instantly vanished with the sealing pot, while A staggered back. When A fell to his knees with a big pool of blood forming from his skewered body and the protruding branches, C yelled, "Boss," and raced over to him. Rising from the floor, coughing from the several broken ribs he had just sustained, Darui saw his condition and promptly accompanied C to the raikage's quarters to inquire about his well-being, even though he was in excruciating pain. Then A started coughing up blood, leaving C and Darui with serious looks. "I'll be fine. Mabui. You need to send Darui and C to Dodai and warn them of the danger B is in," A said before he passed out. Mabui shook his head and put a hand on her shoulder. "But sir, the only person who could withstand being teleported by my technique was your father, the third raikage. Darui and C would be ripped to shreds," he exclaimed. "I know. You can do it. Please, hurry," A exclaimed in excruciating pain, and Mabui nodded before getting to her feet and glaring at C and Darui. "We're good, just go ahead and do it," C exclaimed, getting ready. She exclaimed, "Tenso no Jutsu," as C and Darui closed their eyes and vanished like a flash of lightning. The valley of lightning and clouds as he waited for the storm to eventually produce a lightning bolt for him to try and redirect, B exclaimed, "Yo man, this is getting boring, I'm snoring over here." Bayako grinned and stood with his arms crossed, watching B try to position himself so he could try to attract a lightning bolt with one of his super vibrato swords in his hand. "B, it's not gonna happen." He was there to protect Noboru, along with Dodai, a higher-ranking Kumo.nin. Dodai and B were taken aback by Darui and C's abrupt appearance in the clearing they were in, as they appeared worn out and exhausted. "What happened?" he yelled, sprinting to C's aid as Darui passed out from his wounds and the agony of being carried by Mabui's jutsu. "Is my brother okay?" inquired B. C spit out a little bit of saliva and looked up at B. Then, with a crack of thunder, the storm intensified, the winds howling through the valley, and a bolt of lightning illuminating a lone figure standing on the edge of a cliff overlooking the group of shinobi with the Kohaku no Johei by his side. A's been attacked by a masked man. He took the Kohaku no Johei. "Coming after you," said C through sharp breaths before finally passing out. Menma looked down at them, Bayako growling at him, Noboru clutching his swords, and said, "Well, look who we have here. 3 insects and the Hachibi. It's my lucky day." He said, "Let's have some fun." Then, Dodai formed a rope out of a rubbery material with a light color and wrapped it around B before jumping off. Meanwhile, Bayako made several hand gestures before raising his hand to Menma. With a lance-shaped lightning bolt shooting up from the tips of his fingers to the edge of the cliff, he yelled, "Raiden! Gion!" With the sealing pot in hand, Menma leapt skyward and created a dark orb of chakra, resembling Saturn, with multiple large chakra rings encircling it until they leveled out. Rasenringu. Before the masked man threw the chakra orb at them, The two Akatsuki members hesitated and then rolled away as the jutsu struck the earth and caused a huge explosion. Did he just say Rasengan? Asked Noboru in confusion. The jutsu attacked everything it touched on a molecular level, with the deadly potential to eradicate everything into non-existence, instantly disintegrating anything caught in its epicenter. As Dodai pulled him through the gorge's mountains, the explosion casting their shadows in front of them, B yelled, "What the hell, fool?" Dodai, a little put out by B's intransigence, said, "It's you he's after. And if he has the Kohaku no Johei, he has the intention of sealing you and your Biju." Gyuki, feeling the same way as B at the moment, calmly but somewhat grudgingly said, "B, he's right. If that guy was able to beat your brother, the Raikage, he is a force to be reckoned with. This is the best thing we can do right now." Noboru coughed as he squinted back at the valley, trying to pick out any distinct forms in the dust. "Byako!" he exclaimed, his voice resonating throughout the vast valley. It was quiet, completely quiet. Byako appeared out of nowhere from the lightning. Flecked dust, his teeth sticking out of his mouth and his eyes ferocious as he charged at him, or rather, it appeared to be something behind him. He cried out, "Behind you!" Noboru ducked and rolled away, and Menma struck him with a kunai exactly where the back of his neck should have been. Unable to respond, Byako tackled him squarely, sending him back into the swirling clouds of dust. As Byako's voice came out of the dust cloud, "Raiden! Byako no Kiba!" And a bright flash of light appeared from the wall of brown before it vanished. Noboru fought the masked man who defeated the Raikage, fearing for his friend's life. From the dust clouds came the sounds of metal blades clashing, and then other sounds of battle that made Noboru cringe every time they rang out. Then a sound he was all too familiar with reverberated out of the cloud. Something sickening. The sound of a knife piercing flesh. "Byako!" exclaimed Noboru once more as the dust eventually settled and the horrifying sight inside became apparent to him. Byako's heart was still beating, with tiny amounts of blood still circulating through its chambers, and Menma's entire arm was impaled through his chest, causing blood to flow down his cloak and drip from his chin. Menma tore Byako's arm from his chest as he sputtered, causing Byako to fall flat and hit the ground with a loud thud. Now, who's next? Crossing the border into Lightning Country to enter Frost Country. "We're almost to Frost Country," Dodai said, with B sprinting beside him rather than being pulled by a rubber rope behind the more experienced shinobi. Abruptly, the earth in front of them parted, and a number of wooden limbs and roots reached skyward, creating an interlocking wall that blocked their way. Menma strode over to them with the sealing pot in his hand and said, "You made some good time, getting away like you did. But the road ends here, the Hachibi is mine." "What did you do to Byako and Noboru, if you're here?" exclaimed B, and Menma gave a crazy smile behind his mask. Menma spoke menacingly, "Your two friends back there? I'd say. They're not doing so well." Noboru had blacked out from the blood rapidly draining from his waist, legs, and the lower portion of his body lying near him, having been cut in half from his upper half. "Jesus!" With a snicker, the masked man stepped forward to protect B, warning him to stay back, B. In an instant, Menma found himself facing the senior shinobi with a sizable black orb containing chakra rings and 3 smaller black spheres circling it. He remarked, "You have courage, I'll give you that, but it's foolish." Menma said, "Wakusei Rasenringu," before shoving the 4 spheres into Dodai's stomach. The shinobi's face twisted in shock and agony, and then intertwining whirlwinds of chakra propelled him backward. After rolling across the ground for a few yards, he finally stopped, his clothes ripped to pieces around his abdomen and blood slowly seeping from his chin. B hurried over to check on him and put his fingers to his neck, and when he and Gyuki saw that he still had a pulse, albeit a weak one, they both exhaled. "All right, it's time this motherfucker got the shit kicked out of him." As B stood up from his kneeling position next to Dodai and glared back at Menma with clenched fists, Gyuki said, "I couldn't agree more." Gyuki fed B almost infinite amounts of chakra, not even caring about his bad rhymes, "My bad rhymes," saying, "All right foo. Whoever you are. You about to be killed. Ain't that the truth, sad B?" He exclaimed, "Here be my man Gyuki, and myself, Darapin Killer B," before raising his hand in the air like a rock and roll guitarist and conjuring up the version 2 mode of his Biju, complete with a horned skull and spinal cord, like a bull's skeleton. Menma watched B finish transforming an exhale and deep breath, releasing a cloud of steam from his mouth, and thought, "Oh, This is getting interesting. Rariato, exclaimed B, who then lunged toward Menma while bending forward slightly and cocking his arm out to the side. Menma flinched at the unexpected attack and burst of speed. Menma's entire chest and neck area was blown away, exposing some cracked ribs, a broken spinal cord, and his neck muscles. B's outstretched arm struck Menma full force in the neck and upper chest area, sending blood cascading outward. Launched back from the force of the attack, Menma hacked out more blood, hitting the ground multiple times before coming to a stop, raspy, short breaths coming from his blown apart lower neck. Before the same dark red chakra from before appeared on his skin and started to heal the wound in his outfit until it was as though he had never been hit, Menma thought, damn, he hits hard. If I couldn't regenerate thanks to Hashirama's cells and my own chakra, I would be dead. Time to step it up then. Yuki said to B, who nodded, this guy's got incredible healing capabilities. No wonder he survived a fight with your brother unscathed. Menma wiped himself off and gave B a scowl while simultaneously flashing the sign for a snake. Menma exclaimed, try this on for size. Mokuton. Kajukai Korin. Just before the ground erupted around him and different tree roots and branches began to grow exponentially from the earth, creating an incredibly dense forest that B was quickly ensnared in. Subsequently, enormous, pink flowers blossomed from each branch, releasing copious clouds of pollen that had an unsettling yellow appearance and started to spread swiftly through the atmosphere. Yuki warned B, put that scarf of yours over your mouth and nose immediately, as the pollen moved closer to them and B went back to normal. Why? Just do it, Yuki cried impatiently, and B complied fast, pulling his white scarf up over his mouth and nose in time to avoid the pollen cloud that was about to hit them and cause the sky to darken due to the sheer volume of pollen the flowers were releasing. Thank you. B looked at the branches he was beneath and said, why were you getting so high-strung about some pollen? I remember this technique. It was a jutsu able to be performed by Konoha's first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. That pollen, if inhaled, can render any inflicted target unconscious, no matter how strong they are. You're lucky you have that scarf there because I doubt you would have been able to hold your breath for long. The first Hokage. What's a guy today doing with a technique and a keke genkai from a dead guy? I don't know, but whoever this guy is, he was able to get a hold onto Hashirama's DNA or something. Otherwise no one else in the world would be able to perform wood release techniques. Explained Gyuki as B sighed. Well, he certainly knew how to use that scarf to prevent himself from breathing in pollen. Guess it's time for a surprise, Menma observed from the top of a massive tree that had emerged from the forest. As he spoke, a perfect duplicate of himself emerged from the tree to stand next to him and look down at the trapped bee. Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, he exclaimed. As the clone nodded and dove into the pollen-covered forest below, the original said, you know what to do. As B moved through the forest's tangled branches and roots, keeping his senses sharp to the smallest hint of chakra, Yuki said, we need to figure out how to beat this guy and fast. Rasenringu. Yuki screamed, duck, just in time for B to duck beneath another black chakra sphere spiraling inward. The jutsu then sliced through a few branches in front of them before a voice commanded, burst. As the jutsu spread out to cover more of the forest, B swiftly jumped up to one of the higher branches and sliced them to shreds, leaving nothing behind, the branches it caught within its radius completely gone from existence. B. Behind you. What? He exclaimed as he spun around to see Menma charge at him and punch him in the stomach, sending him skyrocketing. Menma yelled, Mokuton. Daijirin no Jutsu. As B looked up and saw him fly towards him. He had jumped off the enormous tree and was arching his arm back when he threw the many wooden branches forward. They grew very quickly, and B's eyes widened for a split second when he noticed their sharpened tips. The first stake that emerged from Menma's arm pierced his forearm and then stabbed through his right shoulder as he was pushed back down towards the trees below. He lowed through the branches until he smashed into the ground, the other branches digging into the ground around him. Another one? Shit. He cursed before raising his hand. Upon breaking his arm in the stream of branches he had formed, Menma reunited with his clone on a branch that overlooked B. The older shinobi noticed their presence and deduced the reason behind it. Yuki groaned as he broke his branch and painfully pulled it out of his arm, then pulled the bit that had punctured his shoulder. He made a clone, probably a wood clone. He's a master at analyzing the battlefield. Yuki, we need to go into tailed beast mode. Fighting like this ain't gonna get us nowhere. Agreed. Yuki uttered just before B's chakra began to rapidly expand. He exclaimed, "Here we go." As Yuki's chakra encircled him and he grew bigger and bigger, Menma and his clone observing as he assumed the form of his Biju. "This is where things get crazy," exclaimed B, glancing down at Menma, who was frozen in place by the unexpected change in the odds. Menma began stringing together multiple seals and sent his clone to retrieve the Kohaku no Johei from the large tree. Thinking to himself, he went into tailed beast mode. "Oh well, it's only delaying the inevitable." Menma exclaimed, "This fight ends now." Mokuton. Mokuryu no Jutsu. As a massive wooden construct appeared on his back. It grew longer and longer until it formed a dragon's head with 4 legs, an elephant trunk nose, large fangs, and spikes spread across its large snake-like body. "Ah, shit," exclaimed Yuki, surveying the wooden dragon snake that encircled Menma. B questioned, "What is it, Yuki?" "We need to destroy that dragon as soon as possible. If it binds us, it will slowly suck away all of our chakra and render us able to be sealed." "Killer B," was exclaimed by Menma as his clone brought the Kohaku no Johei back to him and put his hand on its lid. Just as he opened his mouth to reply, B cut him off abruptly. "You do know how one gets sealed into that, right?" "No," Yuki clarified. "The user calls out the target's name and if he responds, he is instantly sealed into the pot. No questions asked." Menma scowled at his ill-fated attempt to seal B quickly and shrugged a few seconds later. He sighed and said, "Oh well, worth a try," before jumping up onto the wood dragon's head. His clone, having fulfilled its mission, returned to its original form among the wooden branches below. Menma charged at B, saying, "Let's see who shall win, my dragon or your Biju." "Biju. Dama," exclaimed B as he conjured up a massive tailed beast ball and swallowed it, quickly reabsorbing it into a massive beam that resembled a wave and completely destroyed the surrounding area. Menma grinned as the ground split apart with the assistance of some roots, allowing him and his dragon to vanish beneath the earth. Before the wood dragon erupted from the earth beneath him, throwing B off balance, the dragon began to encircle him and devour his chakra. B thought he had destroyed the dragon. "Damn it!" yelled B as he swung his arm around, plunging his massive hand into the dragon's body and ripping it off of him. The dragon immediately attached itself to B, continuing to drain his chakra. "B, resist the urge to give in. We are unable to fail," roared as he tore the dragon from his body once more and created another Biju. "Dama, compressing and ingesting it," urged on Yuki. The masked man was hiding his chakra fairly well, enough so that even the most highly trained sensor wouldn't sense him, but to a Biju, it was easier. Yuki then had a strange deja vu from him, feeling like he had met him before. Then he came to the conclusion. He hid a small portion of his chakra in the Biju. Dama he swallowed, keeping it hidden from B until he was ready to unleash it on the wood dragon. More precisely, the man wearing the mask. "Goodbye, Fu," as he unleashed a powerful compact laser on the Biju. Dama, completely destroying the dragon and providing B with a brief moment of relief, B spoke up. "B. Dodai. I thought he would be prepared to assist him in the fight," said B as he turned around. However, he was quickly overcome with fear upon seeing Menma's clone, who was actually the original, on the wooden dragon, holding Dodai by the throat and resting his hand on the Kohaku no Johei, Menma sneering behind his mask. "Well shit," B cursed, and then watched as Menma threw the barely conscious Dodai, opened the jaw, and sealed B's form and chakra, more specifically, Yuki, within the jar. Menma grinned, his work finally accomplished, and put the pot's lid back on. "We have 1 down and 8 to go. It's time to give Indra this present." "I'm already here." Menma turned to see Indra approaching him, his body faded and transparent, making him appear to be a ghost. "How are you doing in this place?" Menma inquired as Indra moved closer to the sealing pot and held his hand up to it. "Through Yurei no Jutsu, or the chakra." Indra closed his eyes and put his hand on the jar, saying, "Well done on capturing the Hachibi. This means the only high-level Biju left to capture is the Kyubi." He drank from the jar as a red cloud of chakra emerged, and as he extended his other hand, B's lifeless, bruised body appeared next to him. "Having obtained the Kohaku no Johei, I advise you to proceed to the remaining villages and seize the remaining Biju." "Horo is already headed towards Iwagakure," Indra uttered before his form vanished and left Menma by herself. Menma thought to himself. The Kyuubi then shook off the memories, grabbing the sealing pot and jumping away, not realizing that Dodai, who was barely alive, was pressing a finger to a small radio pin to his shirt collar. This is Dodai. They got B. Kumo's been attacked. What? By attacked, what do you mean? The Raikage is in critical medical condition, he's on the verge of death. What about his brother? Did you miss that? His Biju had been completely taken out of him when he was discovered dead close to Lightning Country's border. Are you really saying this? What in the world is happening? They say he was attacked by a masked man. A man wearing a mask. How cliched. A new villain hides his identity with a mask, but it's still the same. It isn't stereotypical when he can put the Raikage in the hospital on life support and killed his Jinchuriki brother after taking the Biju out of him, doing it all with an extinct Kekkei Genkei too. I can't believe this is happening. Where's the Akatsuki in all this? Yeah, shouldn't they be like, protecting us and all that? They were completely destroyed, but they did have two members there. One's heart was torn out, while the other was split open. What that guy did to them was horrific. Jesus Christ. God have mercy on their souls. Why does this have to happen every time in this messed up world we live in? Tell me why, please. Slow down. That just occurred with Kumo. Perhaps it was a one-time incident involving a man vying for dominance, you know. Are you aware? Your awareness? Are you trying to assure me that this won't occur once more? Because of their Jinchuriki and Biju, every village is a target. This guy is going to want every single Biju, not just one. Maybe it was that Indra guy the Akatsuki defeated all those years ago. Whoever he is, he's using an extinct Kekkei Genkei that is able to almost kill the current Raikage, the fastest and strongest man alive, and defeat his brother, the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, the second strongest Biju out of the 9. Damn, whoever this masked man is, and whatever his goal is, with capturing Biju, the others and their Jinchuriki, if they have one, are going to need a lot of protection. Why, oh, why is the calm we've enjoyed for years? Why is everything just going to crumble to pieces? Why? The Sanagakure gates. After completing his trot towards the gates, Naruto arched an eyebrow upon noticing Suzaku and Naoshi standing patiently by the heavy oak doors, their expressions not entirely amused. When Suzaku transformed back into a human and blew out the smoke cloud from his cigar, he questioned, "What's wrong?" Raising an eyebrow, Naruto said, "Gaara wants to see you about an important matter that concerns both of you." Naoshi then left with Suzaku to head to the cage tower, leaving him in charge of guarding the gate. As Suzaku sighed deeply, Naruto asked, staring around the deserted streets and alleyways, "What's going on, Suzaku? The village looks empty." He said dryly, "Kumo's been attacked." Naruto was horrified by the shocking revelation but also a little unsurprised. "What?" Suzaku spoke up, saying, "That's all I can say. Gaara's prohibited any free speech of that particular topic in public. He doesn't want to cause any mass hysteria." Naruto was staring around at the deserted streets, hoping for better news, as though they knew who had done it. He wasn't sure about it. As soon as Naruto and Suzaku descended to the cage building's roof, a number of Anbu appeared from the sand covering the surface and joined hands. Then Suzaku and Naruto started to descend through the roof and land directly in Gaara's office. Though his friend had grown taller and had lost most of his childlike features, Naruto was still surprised by how much he had changed. Despite this, his friend's eyes continued to have the warmth they had shared since they first became friends. He apologized, "Sorry for the tight security. We can't have anyone going in through the front door at the moment." Suzaku moved a few feet away from the desk to give them space, and Naruto nodded. Naruto answered directly, "Yeah. Anyway, Suzaku told me a little of what has recently occurred with Kumo." Naruto's expression darkened as Gaara said, "Yeah, about that. Kumogakure was attacked recently by an unknown attacker many have already named the Masked Man." He questioned, "What happened? How much of the village is destroyed?" Gaara gave him a similar expression. "The village itself is fine. The real damage is in its leadership and ranks. Several shinobi are dead, a couple are injured, and the Raikage is on life support, his life in critical condition." What could have possibly injured him? "This," declared Gaara, grabbing a picture of the Raikage from the hospital and presenting it to Naruto. His two bodyguards, C and Darui, are hospitalized, with the former with extreme exhaustion after having been teleported through the heavenly transferal technique, while the latter possesses several broken ribs, a punctured diaphragm and a fractured collarbone. Fearful of learning more about this disaster, Naruto questioned, who could have done this? The Raikage's assistant claimed she heard the attacker say, Jinten, which is either the dust release, which is not the case here, so it could only be the swift release, used by your old friend Hiriko, explaining that the severity of the injuries imposed on Darui were caused by the use of chakra-enhanced strength. Naruto vaguely recalled the rogue Konoha.nin who attempted to use his Chimera technique and absorb Kakashi's Sharingan. Gaara stated solemnly, and for the Raikage, the branches emerging from his body are a product of a wood release technique. Naruto was shocked to hear the shocking information. The wood release? The last known user was Yamato from Konoha, and then there's Suzaku too. Who could have been able to procure an extinct Kekkei Genkei? Gaara put down the Raikage photo and put his hands on the desk, saying, that's not even the worst part. The Raikage's brother, Killer Bee, was found dead and without a Biju at the border of Frost and Lightning Country, and two of your members, Byako and Noboru, were found in the Valley of Lightning and Clouds. The terrible news Naruto was receiving at the moment caused his world to crumble, and he was afraid to inquire about the whereabouts of the people in his organization. He asked, and what of Noboru and Byako? Gaara took a sharp breath. Noboru is fine, he had multiple stab wounds and was bisected, but he is recovering quickly thanks to the efforts of Kumo's medics. Byako though, he perished by blood loss and he had his heart ripped out. Gaara finally said, leaving Naruto speechless. Suzaku muttered in disbelief, Jesus. Since he had not heard the details before, but he had grown accustomed to hearing news like this. To break the ice in the empty room, Naruto inquired, about B. You said his Biju, Yuki, was taken out of him? With what? Gaara cleared his throat to continue. Yes. The tool used to seal him was the Kohaku no Johei, having been stolen from Kumo's cage tower after the defeat of the Raikage. Before Naruto got up, he wondered if Gaara was finished. Could it be Indra? I need to contact Kakashi and Jen Kaku and inform them of this new development. He reasoned, but there was still one more piece of news he had to share. And another thing, Suzaku lifted an eyebrow in expectation as Naruto pivoted back in his direction. Gaara warned, with what has just happened, you and I are now prime targets. It's only a matter of time before we are attacked as well. Naruto nodded slowly, fear setting in before he and Suzaku left the room, both of them clearly shaken by the Kasuga's words. When Naruto and Suzaku reached the wall of Sanagakure, they nodded to Naoshi. I'm going to return to Taiyo City, expect a message from me soon. We're going to have an organization-wide meeting ASAP, Naruto said. He sprang from the wall and sprinted quickly through the sand, not wanting to change into a different person so that he would be obvious. Bijeju will become an easy target since a masked man is robbing him while he's out and about. Damn it, first Indra escapes, then Menma is kidnapped with men possessing the Rinnegan, and now we have a masked man capturing Biju. All my efforts to create peace and fulfill my promise to Nagato are coming crashing down, damn it, he grumbled as he increased his speed. In less than an hour, he arrived in Taiyo City, dashed through the gates, and headed straight for the Akatsuki Tower. Rather than entering through the doors, he chose to run up the side of the enormous skyscraper to his office and squeeze in through the window. There was a surprise waiting for him when he arrived. He asked, Akayuri, what are you doing here? Observing her waiting for him in the corner of his desk. She smiled slightly and said, I finished up operations in Getsugakure as quickly as I could, then I decided to come here and be with you. She was trying not to mention that Indra had been freed, but she was unaware of the information she was going to learn. Naruto apologized in a hurried tone, I'm sorry, I don't have time to talk. I have to contact everyone to address a very important matter. He then sent out thought waves to all of the Akatsuki members, enabling them to make contact with him and attend via the magic body lantern technique. She asked in a worried tone, what is it? Naruto sighed heavily before turning to face her. Naruto quickly broke the devastating news to Akayuri, who was taken aback. Menma is missing. Kumo's been attacked by a masked man. Is been put in the emergency room due to a wood release technique that impaled his body with multiple branches. Byako is dead, and Killer B, his brother, was found dead and without a Biju. Do you think it was Indra? She asked. Naruto nodded, and then the astral projections of Naoshi, Suzaku, and everyone else materialized until they were all there. When Noboru's form eventually materialized, it was so contorted that it gave the impression that he was dozing off on a bed. The other members raised their eyebrows in disbelief as he said, "I'm sorry for this, but I had to practically beg the nurse to allow me to perform a technique." Naruto then approached them. "Sorry everyone, but some dire news has just arisen as of yesterday night." Tamura asked, "What do you mean? And where's Byako? And why is Noboru like that?" Naruto grew gloomy. "In case you haven't heard, a man known as the Masked Man recently attacked Kumo." "What?" With a doubtful expression, Yahiko asked as Senkuku folded his arms. Suzaku sadly said, "It's true," and Arashi muttered to himself. "You have to be shitting me, so what took place? How is the village doing?" asked Genkaku, while Naruto fixed him with a serious look. "The village is fine, but this masked man attacked the Raikage and his bodyguards, severely wounding one with chakra-enhanced attacks utilized through the swift release and fatally injured the Raikage with, unfortunately, the supposedly extinct wood release." "Release of wood? How the devil is that?" asked Yahiko in a perplexed tone, drawing several nods of agreement from the other participants. "How he managed to completely destroy the Raikage, I have no idea. Now let's talk about Byako and Noboru. Noboru is currently in the hospital after recovering from being cut in half. Remember, by my own fucking swords." Noboru growled in annoyance as Naruto cleared his throat and continued. "Before being bisected, and Byako was killed by the Masked Man while attempting to protect the Raikage's brother, Killer B. Is Byako dead?" asked Konan in a startled tone, and Naruto nodded slowly, casting fear and anxiety over the Akatsuki members. With a raised hand, Naruto stopped Kakashi from saying, "Jesus, it has to be Indra. There's more. We'll talk about that later. Killer B and his guardian, Dodai, a well-known shinobi in Kumo, attempted to escape, reaching the border of Frost and Lightning Country before coming under attack from the Masked Man. The Masked Man trapped them in a massive forest using more wood release techniques, and in the end, he managed to capture and suck Yuki, the Hachibi, out of Killer B, killing him in the process." When he said these things, the Akatsuki erupted, and Suzaku's strong, loud voice was the only thing that could calm them down. "Pay attention. Talking endlessly about it will not solve the problem. We must take action because there is a Biju thief on the loose. After all, we are the Akatsuki. How about us, though? Now that we're prime targets?" As Chomei nodded, Matabi spoke nervously. Yahiko seconded the motion because he was interested in the Jinchuriki of the Rokubi. "The roles have now been reversed, and the village where you are will watch out for you too. Together, Yahiko, Seryu, your partner, and the Kiri.Nin will protect you, and together, we will make every effort to keep the Biju and their Jinchuriki safe." With everyone's attention on him, Naruto fell silent and Seryu asked, "But what about you?" As the members' astral forms vanished, Naruto declared, "We'll discuss that later. Right now, as of this moment, this meeting is dismissed. I wish you all good luck." He then dispelled the jutsu and turned to face his desk, looking out at the brilliantly shining sun with a stressed-out expression on his face. His anger was beginning to show, and although he had tried his hardest to hide it, Akiyuri was now concerned for him as he smashed his fist into the desk's beautiful wooden finish. Naruto let out a long breath as he relaxed as she approached him, put her arms around his shoulders, and gave him a hug. She said in his ear, "We'll get through this, don't stress out about it so much." Naruto's fist unclenched as he looked down from the sun to the city below, its residents completely oblivious to the situation outside the city's walls. Naruto sobbed as he fell heavily into his chair, Akiyuri staring at him with concern. "I know. But I just can't. Killer B is dead and someone has obtained the Hachibi, most likely Indra, and is likely to strike again soon. What's stressing me out is that I don't know where. It may be Kiri, Suna, it may be even this city in an attempt to capture me." Her signature smirk asked, "Still, just please try not to stress yourself out about it. Do it for me. Okay?" Naruto, unable to contain his annoyance, grinned inside once more. "Well, I guess," he uttered before giving Akiyuri another hug, feeling relieved that he wasn't under as much stress right now. It wouldn't endure. Close to the grass country boundary, as the two strolled down a narrow dirt path through a grassy plain that ran along the edge of grass country border, home of Kusagakure, Naoshi's home village, Kakashi remarked. Well, this just got a whole lot more fun, Jen Kaku? With a small sigh. He could hardly make out the enormous woods full of magnificent trees that he had learned about during the Third Shinobi World War, which was fought primarily in the rain and grass countries. He was too filled with painful recollections of that war to not shiver at the thought of it. It had only recently occurred to Kakashi that he had stopped and was staring at the trees for a few minutes when Jen Kaku asked in a rough voice, "Something bothering you?" He looked away from the trees and said, "Nah, I'm fine." He was walking with the older shinobi when he suddenly realized that the man was older than 50 because Sasori, Suna's greatest puppet master, had trained him before he went rogue, of course. He asked, "Anyway, where do you think this new guy, the masked man, is gonna hit next?" As they walked happily away, Genkaku letting out a long sigh. "To be honest, I'm not interested in thinking about it. Since Naruto, Shomei, Matabi, and Yahiko are in danger, we must find Indra, who could be this masked man, as soon as possible and eliminate him to ensure that he doesn't endanger any more innocent people," he said, and Kakashi took in his words before nodding in scornful response to his query. After a brief while of walking, Kakashi's eyes narrowed and he cast a sidelong glance at Genkaku, who gave him a quiet nod and said, "Yeah, I know he's there too." Kakashi thought to himself, as if nothing had happened, "Well, I guess we just keep going along until we find the guy we're looking for." The two were just strolling along the path, and without their follower knowing, they were already planning an attack strategy, with Kakashi's Sharingans changing to the Mangekyo Sharingan characteristic to him and him alone. Genkaku shrugged slightly and said, "Yeah, it's not like he would be following us or anything." "What? Kamui?" exclaimed Kakashi as he spun around. A familiar vortex distortion appeared in his right eye, and several quickly spinning giant shuriken shot outward into the tall grass behind them. A shadowy figure then leapt out of the grass onto the dirt path, while a plume of dust and a flock of screeching birds rose into the air. The figure behind the pale white mask said, "I should have expected an attack like that from you, since you do possess the Sharingan." Kakashi was a little unnerved by the feeling it gave off. As Genkaku eyed their opponent's weapon, a large vicious scythe engraved with strange symbols, he said, "So, I presume you are the masked man everyone is talking about. Or are you the man that Noboru spoke of? The Shinigami, or should I say, Horo Yamato?" Genkaku shivered at the man's lighthearted but simultaneously insane laughter. With a twist of his scythe, Horo said, "The latter, I'm afraid. The masked man has better things to do. Right now, since I was on my way to wherever, I guess I'll entertain myself with you too." Kakashi narrowed his eyes at the guard, who was reduced to a strip of leather hanging around his neck. "All right, if you're looking for some entertainment, let's get started," Kakashi said, before Genkaku's extra arms raised up from behind and formed a seal, engulfing his right hand in blue lightning. With a sneer from behind his mask, Horo was about to be slashed by Kakashi when he finished, "We'll provide it." Its blade caught him off guard as it phased right through Kakashi's abdomen. Soon after, as Kakashi flew through him, his entire body phased through him. The moment he left his body, he swung his hand around and sliced through part of Horo's skin and the back of his cloak. Horo growled as Kakashi dove away to avoid another swing of his evil scythe. Horo looked at Genkaku and formed a string of seals, thinking, "I need to be careful with the Hitaki. He possesses Kamui and a keen battle sense. His partner, however, I'm gonna have to improvise on." "Futon. Daitopa," he exclaimed, then held out his arm and sent a straight column of wind in Genkaku's direction. "Jishin. Juryoku Henka Fosuhebi," Genkaku calmly uttered before his body abruptly submerged beneath a loud crack, the column of wind passing over him without incident. Horo thought, so he has the magnet release, interesting. Just next to Horo, Genkaku materialized out of nowhere like a bullet, slamming his leg out in front of him to prevent him from mounting a counterattack. Horo moaned, "Shit. He's fast," as Kakashi kicked him back with enough force to break a regular person's bones. "I'll handle him while you develop it," with a right, Genkaku started to take off his cloak. "Raiju Hashiri no Jutsu," exclaimed Kakashi as he unleashed a bolt of lightning from his hand that instantly transformed into a hound that approached Horo in a zigzag pattern before leaping up at him. "Megan. Satsujin Kuro," he exclaimed, and in an instant, his body split apart into a swarm of cawing crows, throwing Kakashi for a moment blind before he realized that Horo was actually Horo and turned around to face him. You're pretty good with those eyes of yours. This fight is enjoyable. Horo mocked as he swung his fist at Kakashi, only for Kakashi to grab his leg when he disconnected from his body and form his signature attack with his other hand. Horo's entire body then phased through Kakashi once more. He yelled, "Rakery," as he stabbed Horo in the back and out of his chest, causing the man to gasp in pain as blood spurted from the blow. "Damn it!" he exclaimed, falling forward as Kakashi pulled his hand away from his back. He clutched his chest and coughed violently, the wound tearing through his body. "I got it," exclaimed Genkaku as, at last, a chest cavity opened up around his body, releasing a cloud of iron powder that soon multiplied into multiple clouds that levitated around his body in a manner akin to a multi-layered defensive shield. "Setetsu Kaiho," he exclaimed, describing the numerous clouds of iron powder that rose high into the air before turning erratic and dispersing throughout the space. Horo attempted to assess their descent before it was too late, but several of the sharp spikes pierced him through various openings on his body. As Kakashi turned to face Horo, who was motionless within the tangled web of iron powder spikes, Genkaku declared, "Checkmate." "Hee hee. Ha ha," he burst out laughing, causing more blood to spurt from his wounds, and Genkaku and Kakashi watched him warily. As he laughed, the pain, the blood, the taste of the blood. The two Akatsuki members shivered, sensing the insanity laced throughout. Horo cried out, I want to taste your blood," as he snapped out of the spikes and fell backwards, tensing both Kakashi and Genkaku as he bent over and clutched his mask. He roared, "Hee. Ha 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 ha," with delight before ripping off his mask to reveal a hideous face that would have chilled even Naoshi's blood. He had two characteristic horns sticking out of his forehead, and his teeth were razor-sharp to the point of death. The most unsettling thing about him was his face. Like Zetsu, his face was divided in half. The left half displayed a truly insane smile that revealed his honed teeth, deep lines surrounding his visible eye with a light green pupil and dark irises, and the Yamato clan's emblem imprinted around it. On the other hand, his eye appeared as a mere yellow circle, and the rest of his face was completely black, and matched his mask in having a malevolent, piercing smile that extended to his upper cheek, giving him the appearance of a demon from the depths of hell. Kakashi whispered to Genkaku, "That must be the Raven's Claw curse Mark Noboru spoke of." Genkaku nodded and his iron powder returned to him, exposing Horo once more. Horo laughed, clutching his scythe firmly, and yelling, "I'm going to sink my teeth into your neck and rip out your throat." Kakashi narrowed his eyes and focused on the man's left leg. "Kamui," he exclaimed, and then a spiraling vortex engulfed Horo's leg and sucked it away, causing him to grunt as he fell to the ground, his left leg now reduced to a bloody stump. "I'll rip out your throat, eat your heart, and murder you." Kakashi and Genkaku were horrified by how the man had turned so twisted and evil as a result of the curse mark as he screamed out in a fit of rage. When a masked figure suddenly materialized with a kunai sword, an elongated weapon about a meter long, similar to the ones used by the Land of Woods Prajna group in the anime and manga. Kakashi's eyes widened and, in the briefest moment possible, he managed to push Genkaku away. The kunai then impaled Kakashi squarely through the heart. "Kakashi. Jishin," the masked figure said, "Jigoku. Heijun Ichi," as he turned to face Genkaku. Genkaku saw a faint red glow coming from the mosque's eyeholes before the man collapsed to the ground and began convulsing in agony as the jutsu took effect. As Zetsu rose from the ground and dragged the still, crazed and growling Horo away, he gave the command, "Get him out of here." Who are you, exactly?" With shallow breaths, Kakashi asked the man as he turned to look back at him and saw only the man's blank white and red porcelain kitsune mask. The man said, "Since you are about to die, I think I'll enlighten you to that specific subject," and then he leaned close to Kakashi's ear, raising his mask just enough to reveal his whisker, like birthmarks and fanged smile. He grinned and said, "Long time no see, Kakashi." Kakashi's eyes widened as the man twisted the kunai, causing him to gasp in agony. Subsequently, he drew the kunai sword and allowed Kakashi to fall to the ground, dying before he reached the soft earth beneath. Now with that obstacle out of the way, Sanagakure, here I come.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.